Oh, hello everybody. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show. I'd like to welcome everybody into the live stream tonight. We've got a rather exciting show, at least in my mind, for all of you to get across to y'all. So I just invite all of you to sit back, grab yourselves a beverage, and let's have some fun with the evening tonight. Just to tell you a bit about the live show, as I said, this is a live stream that puts the focus on outdoor activities and introduces you to YouTube creators that create the content that we like to watch and learn from. Our live stream will cover everything from, outdoor activities such as canoeing, hiking, backpacking, ice climbing, you name it, bushcraft. It'll try to cover the full gamut. So if you're an outdoor enthusiast, I invite you to make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that bell notification so that you can be in tune with all these shows. And the main thing is, of course, you get to meet and talk to or interact with YouTubers that you may follow, or we might introduce you to some new followers, or people to follow. So I invite you to make sure that you do stay in tune with us for that. Throughout this entire live stream, I am reading here. I got some cue cards to go here, but throughout this entire live stream there, it's an interactive approach. So I encourage any of you that if you have any questions for myself or my guest tonight, please do pipe up. I do have a tendency to fall behind on the chat quite a bit. So if you have an important question and I have missed it, please do post it again. I encourage that because tonight's guest and myself would be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys may have out there. As usual, we're live every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And I'm working hard at getting some new really good guests to bring up here on the show. And they're usually YouTubers that I tend to follow, and I enjoy their content, and because of that I like to share that with you. So just to mention a few people that we do have on upcoming shows, next week we have none other than Kevin Callan from KC Happy Camper. Kevin is a very whimsical gentleman that has written numerous canoe route books. He's got quite the resume. He's written articles for magazines. He's been on many TV appearances. He's been keynote speaker and guest speaker at many symposiums and outdoor events. So yeah, Kevin is very well sought after and renowned here in Ontario and in Canada. So, and then a couple weeks after that, we have a young lady from New Zealand. Young lady of 14 years old, and she is a bushcrafter, or she likes to practice the art of bushcraft. And I find her very inspirational in the fact that she, rather than hanging out in a mall, which is stereotypical of many young ladies, this young lady chooses to spend her time actually honing her craft and learning about bushcrafting skills. So hopefully she'll be tuning in tonight, because our bushcrafter tonight is actually very educated, and he has a lot of he has a good resume. Let's put it that way. And as usual, we're always looking for new show ideas. So after the video, or if you like, my email address is quite accessible. If you have any suggestions for the show, or if you know anybody that might be interested in being a guest on the show, please do drop me a line, and I will definitely follow up on that so that we could try to bring some more content for everybody to enjoy. Yeah, so essentially what we're going to do is in a few minutes I'm going to introduce our guest, but the show itinerary usually follows this format here. I'll introduce our guest here until about 7:50. Him and I will have a bit of a conversation, and we'll pipe in some of your questions that you may have as well. So yeah, like I say, if you have them questions, please do put them forth. At 8 o'clock, we'll be doing our Canoehound Adventures giveaway, as I do every week. And then after that, we'll be opening up the panels so that we can have more people into the stream, and we can have some generalized banter, or you can carry conversation with our guest tonight. So with that being said, let's get on to introducing our guest. Actually, first, before we do that, I'm just going to say hi to a few people that are in the stream that I see here. I see that Ethan from Avid Outdoorsy Guy has just popped in. How you doing, Ethan? Thanks for coming out. We got Dave from Beastly Ironworks and Martin from Pine Martin. Tom Tesnius, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you for sure. And let's see here. Let's go. Kelly Camps is in the house. Thanks for popping in. And just gonna pop on up here a little farther. Of course, a name that you'll see familiar on there is actually tonight's guest. So with that being said, I won't leave him hanging in the green room for very long here. Just like to introduce tonight's guest is a bushcraft instructor who was born in southern Germany and now resides in the Netherlands. His vast knowledge of bushcraft, he travels the far reaches of Europe to teach and hone his craft. He's an elected board member of the BCF Bushcraft Freund. Hopefully he'll have to correct me if I'm saying that wrong, but the Bushcraft Freund, Germany's biggest community specializing solely on bushcraft, and is also an advisor for BTO, Bushcraft Trekking Outdoor Community. Please welcome, and let's just pull up his, I'll just bring it right in the stream. This is Ralf from Rathwulven Bushcraft. How you doing there, Ralf?
Yeah, awesome. A little tired because, as we already discussed, it's 1 a.m. over here, but I'm doing perfectly fine. Got myself a beer, so everything's okay.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, like I say, I encourage everybody to drink responsibly. Drink responsibly during this, and if you don't, all the more power to you. So, how you doing tonight, or this morning, in your case?
Yeah, perfectly fine. I hope you guys are also doing well on YouTube, Dennis.
You know what? We're always doing good. We got a good crowd. Some of the normals are in here, some of our regulars. So we got a good crowd in here so far, and I'm sure it will pick up quite a bit. Just ask it if anybody has the opportunity to probably try and share out this live stream, and let's try and fill the house so that we got a lot of good questions. Rolf, tell us a little bit about yourself there.
Well, yeah, let's just start from the very beginning. As you said, I'm originally from Germany, and I'm just coming from a very rural area there. So Franconia, that's the northern part of Bavaria, close to Nuremberg. Maybe you guys know that city. And I was basically raised in an area that is very rich in pine forests and a very shallow, or very low mountain ranges, so 800 to 1,000 meters. And what we basically did back in the days and how I got to bushcraft is pretty simple. You know, we just went out into the forest, we built teepee huts, built shelters, played cowboys and Indians, the things that kids on the countryside do. And this is kind of like how that started off. Besides that, I'm a fisherman. Like next to the bushcraft things, I'm basically a certified sociologist. I studied that, and I'm now currently trying to build kind of like a bushcraft related school for myself. And I'm also currently working with children in an anthroposophic school. So that's kind of like an alternative type of education program in which it's all about the experience. It's working with natural materials, making clay type of items, and learning wood carving, how to start a fire, and all these things that kind of like get children in touch with their environment. And it's basically schools them in the terms of senses, how to develop your senses in regards to your environment. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Cool, that's very good. So, but what basically inspires you to do what you're doing?
Well, it's a difficult question because first of all, it's nature. I think everybody can relate that you can find peace in nature and that you can develop your mindfulness, so to speak. That's my personal motivation to go outdoors, simply because I guess we all can relate to stress, right? I also used to work 9-to-5 type of jobs, and if you're just spending all your day in the office, and especially in the winter time, and you see the sun rise while you're in the office and go down while you're still in the office, you kind of like go insane, right? And I always had this connection with nature in general, and it just did me well in terms of making me psychologically and bodily healthy. And next to that, of course, there's a lot of inspiration, like the big names, Ray Mears, for example. We talked about that earlier. Lofty Wiseman. Just got a couple of books here, right? And once you start digging into bushcraft-related things or outdoor-related sports and activities, well, you just get into that scene, right? And then you find inspiration in many different places.
How long have you been actually honing your skills?
Well, I think at least some 15 years, but then I'd like to make a little distinction there that back in the days, we did not have that terminology of bushcraft. It was more kind of the skill sets that I adopted from my grandma, because she was very proficient when it comes to foraging, mushroom identification, tree identification, and plant identification. She's, of course, part of the World War II generation. So after the war, they didn't have anything. So I learned a lot about using natural resources like acorns for a coffee substitute and these kind of things. And this is kind of like how it started off. And yeah, throughout time, you start to adapt other skills. That's like wood carving. You start thinking about natural cordage, about how to make yourself like a traditional Sami kuksa, like this item here, and all these kind of things. And so you expand your knowledge bit by bit. That's basically how it happens.
I'll drop you my address, and you can send that kuksa my way, okay?
Well,
I always wanted to carve one. I've got the tools, but I never had a chance. And actually, Ralf has a great video on a proper technique for drying a kuksa so it doesn't actually crack after you put all those long and hard hours into crafting one out. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, trust me about this one. Like, this is, I don't know, number 6 or number, I don't know what, but this is it was the 4th attempt, I think. I had 3 ones go bust after being close to that state, and trust me, it's so frustrating, but you need to keep on going.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to welcome Mama Bear and Hike with Mike into the house. Thanks for joining into the live stream tonight. Tonight's guest is Ralf from Rathwulven Bushcraft. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I keep tripping over my tongue when I I say that name.
Happens all the time, but never mind. Just call it whatever you want.
There you go.
Ralf, that's fine.
Well, tonight you're Ralf for sure, right? So from watching your videos, I see you really take this this nature first and bushcraft second approach to what you do.
Yeah.
Why? Like, can you explain that? Why? I know, like, I see far too many people going into the forest and chopping down live trees to build a shelter, or rather than utilizing deadfall or a dead standing tree. Like, it has to be, we have to try and cherish what we have, right? Especially in your case in Germany, because from what I understand, there's not a lot of opportunity for people like yourself to get out into where you are. Whereas in Canada, we have a lot of crown land. We have, Northern Ontario, or I'm just speaking from my own province, but locally, not so much space. But that's the case with you in your case, right? You don't have a lot of space to work with, do you?
Yeah, and then again, also the spaces that we do have, especially like the bigger forests, like the Black Forest or so, are all national parks. So there are very strict regulations for a reason, because we need to preserve these environments. But yeah, about this nature first, bushcraft second thing, I think we also need to start with the initial idea. And that actually comes from a park ranger in Ireland. His name is Tom, and he's a freelance park ranger in the Wicklow Mountains. And I just met this guy while randomly hiking through the mountain area. And we just started talking, because I asked him, like, hey, how do you deal with the fact that every day you have to encounter trails with plastic bottles stitched on the side of the way, or maybe some kind of like energy bars and trekking food type of packaging that's just thrown somewhere into the forest there, or just right next onto the field, and all these things. And he just said that, like, look, nature always needs to come first, boy. And that just kind of got stuck with me, because I started to reflect on my own behavior out there in nature. I was just asking myself the question, like, hey, am I really doing the best to my ability to protect nature if I'm the guy that goes out and just uses wood indeed to carve some stuff or to build shelters and all these things? And then I just kind of like came up with this idea, hey, maybe the motto for my vision should be nature first and bushcraft second. Because as you say, over here in Europe, it's more of a recreational thing. We don't have the environment that causes genuine survival type of scenarios. We can't really do homesteading because there's so much infrastructure and so much streets and houses and settlements and all these things that you can't really get lost in the real wilderness, so to speak. And that's why we have this responsibility to protect that bit of nature that we still have.
And you know what? I think us as people that do have a platform here, as small as we are as YouTubers, we, trying to get that message across is something that we really should be trying to convey. I never claimed to be a bushcrafter myself. I'm an outdoorsman, and it's like a generalized thing. And my bushcrafting skill is just something that I utilize out there. Okay, but am I a more I'm not a bushcrafter, but Martin from Pine Martin could attest to this, because I just watched it in one of his videos, and it's people unlike us that go out there and they will, like you said, leave the wrappers and leave the bottles out in the nature area, and it turns it into a responsibility of people like ourselves to clean up behind them. So in other words, we're like a mother cleaning up after their child. Yeah. All too often I have gotten out into a canoe trip, and I've been, 20 kilometers, 30, 40, even 40 kilometers in, and finding broken lawn chairs left on campsites, and bottles and garbage. You know what? If you could pack it in, you could pack it out. And that goes for any situation, whether you are, a bushcrafter just using the forest, or if you are a canoeist or a hiker or whatever, take care of what we got, because you know what? Our children one day, who knows what they're going to be faced with. Yeah. In all reality. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we're facing a lot of issues, because I think it also has to do with our modern society or culture when it comes to consumerism. We turned into a species that's just consuming resources and throws away all byproducts. That's why we deal with climate change. That's also why we deal with issues when it comes to these kind of outdoor activities, because more and more people want to reconnect with nature, which is a great thing. I very much endorse that. But then you need to understand the interdependency of everything. It's a really interesting thing also here in the Netherlands. You might think of a country that has a lot of canals, and a lot of waterways, and that you could catch fish easily, but you cannot eat it for a very simple reason. There's just too many boats. There's too many recreational tourist activities. So everything's contaminated with two-stroke type of mixes, oil, any kind of debris that just gets flushed in from the cities. And it's literally impossible to catch fish inland. You would have to go out into the sea and basically catch fish there, which to me is horrible. If I think back of my German origin and like the area that I'm coming from, like the Eichtal Valley where I'm from is known worldwidely for the carp that we can cultivate there. It's a special type of carp. And when I was still a kid, we could fish that and just eat it without any microplastic contamination, all these kind of things. And also that is changing. And it's really important to understand that everything we do will leave an impact one way or another, even if we make ourselves believe that we do not leave a trace or follow certain kind of principles. Wherever we go, we have an impact. So we need to try to think one step further, one at a time, and just try to be better next time, and then try to be better, because that's the learning process. Making mistakes is okay, but if you learn from them, you can grow as a bushcrafter, canoeist, whatever you do in the outdoors.
Now, we were talking, like, before the show started, we were talking in the green room about, this misnomer about people thinking that they're bushcrafters. What makes a bushcrafter a bushcrafter, or what makes a wannabe not a bushcrafter?
Well, I don't like to use the word wannabe, because it sounds a little like finger point, like you're a wannabe and I'm the professional. Well, maybe that's the first thing. Like, maybe I should quote Paul Kirtley here, a very famous bushcraft instructor, a senior bushcraft instructor from England. He once got this question from one of his master students, who asked, like, hey, when can I become a teacher? And Paul Kirtley replied with a very simple sentence: you're questioning yourself, so you did the first step. And I found this to be a very remarkable quote, in the sense that it's the desire to get better, to learn, to develop your skills. And you can start with any simple thing. If you just make your own cordage from nettle fibers, you're already bushcrafting. If you're carving yourself a stick to put a sausage on top and cook that on your campfire, right? Then you're already crafting, because you're creating something. You don't have to build mega shelters. You don't have to engage into this kind of like social media culture in which you want to make that a challenge. Who builds the biggest mega shelter, and who's the craziest survivor, and who can last 72 hours just with a wooden stick, naked in the forest and afraid, and I don't know, all these kind of things. Same thing with this Bear Grylls mentality. You don't need to kill a snake just to drink blood. I mean, it's even a pretty stupid idea, because who knows what kind of bacteria and contaminants are in there. It's just all, you need to just stay earth, stay very normal and just do simple things. Like, I got a couple of things here. For example, for the bow drill, even if you don't manage to create a friction fire, start carving one of these spindles. You're already crafting. If you do that, you're already on the right path, and give things a try and allow yourself to fail. That's the most important thing. And don't listen too much about people that say, hey, I got the biggest balls and I'm the craziest survival guy and I spent 24 hours in the forest just surviving with a knife, because they go home the next day, jump under the shower, drink a hot cup of cocoa, and then they edit their video and try to make you believe some nonsense that is not applicable to the real world. And that's the only thing that I can say about being a real bushcrafter. If you want to be a real bushcrafter, exchange ideas with people, be open for criticism, go out and work with your hands, work with your senses, learn about a plant or two. If you learn about one plant a week, for example, you will end up with 52 plants after a year that you could identify, for example. If you don't like this, you start flint knapping, for example, or you start working with friction fire, or you just build yourself a tipi hut. It's all up to you. It's all up to you.
That's right. And I find being a bushcrafter, if you want to be classified a bushcrafter, you have to live the life. That's just my take on it. There's weekend warriors, and then there's people that live the life, right? Yeah. And not to say that a person that's a weekend warrior does not have a great skill set, but it's a skill set. It's something that they've learned, right? So, and I too, and I think you kind of have the same take on it, is to be classified as a bushcrafter is not necessarily the proper terminology for it. You have a skill set. You're living the life, right?
Yeah, and maybe there's an interesting thought on that. Like, try to compare different primitive cultures, because bushcraft is closely linked to primitive technology in the broadest sense. So again, friction fire, flint knapping, and making tools out of stone, wood, like a digging stick, for example, if you want to undig some type of root, like a burdock root you want to eat. And if you just take a look at ancient cultures in general, how do the Ojibwe, for example, compare to the Apaches or to the native people of Scandinavia, like the Sami, or some kind of Polynesian or Filipino people that are engaging in some sort of craft or working with natural materials, right? It differs per geographical area, and everybody has a certain type of skill set that applies for their very region. But what unifies all those bushcrafters or bush people in general is that they just work with natural resources. They make cordage from fibers, they build huts out of pieces of bark, pieces of wood, maybe bamboo, depending on wherever you are. And I think this is what makes the bushcrafter somebody who actively looks for natural materials, starts working with this, and does the best to his or her ability to just engage in working with natural resources in the broadest sense. So at some point we also would switch to, like, we would get to hunting, to trapping. It's all part of bushcraft in a way.
Sure, and you almost have to look at everything out in nature as what kind of purpose can it have? It takes a crafty mind to look at a stick and say, I could turn that stick into this, or I could turn that stick into that. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's definitely a skill set, as I had mentioned. If anybody in the chat has any questions for Ralf, please do put them on. I'm sure he would be more than happy to answer any of the questions. But my next thing for you is asking, what's one of your fondest memories as a bushcrafter? Like, what's one of your fondest experiences that you've ever had out there?
There are so many. Like, I would say in general, every experience when you realize a project, again, like this Kuksa, is just amazing, because you know the time and dedication you put in there. Like, let's see what I also have. This is one of the first spoons I ever made that was burned out with coal right here, just with pyrolysis, however you call it. You just put an ember in here and then you just make that thing. And I worked 3 days on that spoon, just trying to carve the hell out of it. It's a piece of oak wood, so it's the most horrible wood to work with, to be honest. And those are the nice experiences, of course, because you know what this means. Like, it has a very deep meaning because you spend all the time and effort just to create this one single item, so you also treasure it. But then next to that, of course, there's also all the travel experiences, because if you know how to engage with nature and the wilderness in general, you're free to roam, so you can explore a lot of places. I got many stories. Like one was really funny with like in the Alps. I was there with my girlfriend, and in the middle of the night we heard this scream, really distinct sound. It was just going like rah, rah. And I woke up and I just went out, grabbed my knife, and I was just looking around and thought that there was somebody in distress or some person screaming, and we could not figure out who or what screamed that night. And then like after months we saw this documentary about mountain lynxes, and then you saw those 2 male mountain lynx engage in a fight, and I was just sitting there like, hey, I know that sound. Wait a minute. And then 2 days later, it just occurred to me like, wait a minute, that was the exact sound we heard back in the Alps. And then I researched that, and I was like, after 1.5 years, I got closure about what happened that day.
Right.
Like all these kind of memories are awesome, and also encounters with animals, of course. Also the negative experiences too. Like I had a genuine survival situation, which was horrible, but basically led me towards my path of educating myself. It's the realization of your own shortcomings, maybe even your own arrogance, like I experienced some 12 to 13 years ago. And yeah, many different things. Like it's always a new experience. And I think this is what really makes this entire bushcraft thing so interesting. And besides that, you develop your mindfulness. You really become aware of all your surroundings if you just immerse into nature and get off all those distractions and stimuli that you get in everyday life. And I think that's...
So with you saying that, have you been in a true survival situation where your bushcrafting skills have actually gotten you out of that situation?
No, the contrary is the case. Like I got into a survival situation because I overestimated myself in the worst way possible. And just if you want to listen to the details, I also got a Q&A video on my channel. For those who are interested, you can have a look at that in detail. But just to cut a long story short, what happened? I started reading books again, like this SAS guide and just those survival things. And maybe, what's the name again of this club of Louis, Huey, and Dewey? You know, the Donald Duck kind of scouting little woodchucks in English, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but back in the Mickey Mouse magazine, you could collect these pages for this kind of scouting technique and survival technique type of booklet. And I still remember this one technique. It was about chopping notches into living trees so you can mark your waypoints from basically one tree to another so you can find your way back. And what happened, I went to the Alps with a couple of friends, just being 18, being completely pumped up and thinking like, hey, I'm the coolest dude in the world, you know, I'm gonna go on an adventure. And then I set out into unknown terrain just with the hatchet, harmed living trees. It's also insane, you know, I chopped in those notches and I kept on walking for what must have been like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And then I turned around and I realized, hey, I didn't put those notches on the backside of trees. And then I was lost, and I was stupid enough to try to find my way back because I just thought like, hey, I know what I'm doing. You know, I'm this Rambo guy. I'm a survivalist. See, there again comes this really crazy mindset. And what basically happened is that I even got more lost in this terrain, had to spend the first night. Then I got into this very frustrating situation that you see the search and rescue helicopter fly right over you and you try to signal it and scream, but you're still in the forest. Like another stupid idea. You know, I wasn't even going for higher ground because I did not know better. So I stayed there too, and then it started to rain. Then I got soaking wet. Then I got hypothermic, and at some point I got out because basically a team of search and rescue folks with dogs figured out where I was, and they got me out right in time. And this is what set me up.
You were all by yourself in that situation?
No, we were with the 4 of us, but I basically went out on my own and just left the other 3 at the base camp.
Okay.
And that was the stupid idea because I was just like, I'm going to show you something, you know. Yeah. Was a stupid idea. I cannot describe it like in any other word. It was just really dumb.
Well, like you say, it's a situation where, yeah, if you're honing your skills and you try to rely on them, you should never try to put yourself in a situation like that, right? Yeah. If it happens, it happens. But you know, you don't want to put yourself in this situation. In that case, you put yourself in a dangerous situation just because you didn't think to mark the right side of the tree, right? But yeah, you know, it's a thing, I guess, a comfort zone thing where people, if they think they have that skill set, that they're going to test it, and you should never test it unless you have to, or unless you are under a controlled situation. Yeah. Right. You're in a wooded lot that's 20 acres square, and you can find your way out some point somewhere. You know, as long as you have bush around you or field around you. So yeah, it's crazy. Where do you do most of your bushcrafting? I know you travel back and forth between Germany and Netherlands. You know, where do you find your situations most? You know, or yeah, where's your opportunity?
Well, I think if we talk about opportunities, you can find opportunities anywhere. You can go out into your town's park, or if you're in a city, you just go out into some kind of preservation area, some park area, and you can already do quite some stuff. You can even just go down a lane if you got a couple of trees in your street and just have a look at them throughout all the seasons, for example, spring, summer, autumn, winter. Try to understand how nature looks like, how that tree looks compared to an oak or a birch tree and all these kind of things. So I don't think that there are any limitations. What I also just said about the fire drill, I got a set here in the living room, so I can also practice in my living room or on the top of my balcony, or I don't know where. But besides that, like if you really go into the outdoors, I do have a fixed location right here, close to the lake. That's outside of town. If you go like 2 miles out of town, I do have a fixed camp in Germany, in North Rhine-Westphalia, at a territory of a friend of mine. He owns a piece of land there and a forest, so we can do whatever we want there for as much as we coordinate this, of course, with him and just have good agreements there. And besides that, you know, you get kind of connections once you engage in the community. And if people get to know you during bushcraft meetings, like we do with the Bushcraft Fund, which you mentioned before, translates as Bushcraft Friends, by the way, in case people are wondering. You know, you will always bounce into other instructors, for example, like a good friend of mine, Daniel Meyer, who did an alpine crossing just with a simple backpack, carrying a poncho, a water filter, and nothing, nothing else, basically. Like he also owns his own property. He gives some seminars there, more related to survival and extreme situations then. And we also just do our things there, you know, and so you get around, you just get to know people. And if you just start talking, you can also open up any kind of possibility. Because you also said that, right, that you had that friend or like this, that the person now gave you permission basically to engage in crafty type of activities in that area, right?
And that's the best opportunity I have around here is a farmer friend of mine. He actually granted me permission to use his wooded lot. And it's not a very big parcel. It's probably maybe 5-6 acres of land, but it's heavily or pretty dense with hardwood. So it's a nice little place to go and play. And you know what? It's pretty cool because each time I go back, I take a different path in. So I don't have a pathway going in. And last time I went out, I actually walked right past it. Didn't even know I did because it was the first time I'd seen it with leaves on the trees. So yeah, it's always always fun. But I seen that, and you were saying that where you're building your bushcraft shelter is actually a friend's parcel of land that's allowing you to do this, correct?
Yeah,
so true. Most important thing there is if anybody wants to get out and do some bushcrafting, if you know people that have property, attain their permission and get that opportunity, you know, because we don't always have the chance to use what we call in Canada crown land, right? So
yeah,
cool.
Especially in Europe. Like if we take a look at the situation there, every like 1.2 hectare of land or whatever the measurements of a tiny parcel like that are, you know, it's always occupied by somebody. It's all owned. It's all private property, or if it's not private property, it's owned by the state in some sort. And then you just have to figure out how to get this permission, because we got a saying here that you always have the no and you can always get the yes. And I think it's a really important mindset to cultivate, because we got more and more people trespassing, especially in Central Europe, just doing their thing, building fires, you know, being unaware of fire hazards like smoldering fires and flat root type of forests with pines, spruces and such. Sometimes people just build really huge fires of like 50 centimeters, so like 2 or 3 feet in diameter, even though they just want to boil a cup of coffee. Like all these things have a huge impact, of course. And you can always ask for permission, because most people that own land also have a connection with that. Most farmers I know love their own piece of forest. They use this for their own recreational purposes. And it's always awesome to see them also join in and just sit down at camp and just having a chat and maybe even spending the night. Then you learn something about their profession. They learn a little bit about your way of living, and you create this bond. You create trust, which is really important, because we go outdoors all together in that sense that we are we're by far more similar than you might picture. both hunters, bushcrafters, and whatever, they all love nature, right?
Yeah.
But there's always this cultivated, how do you say, hostility from some people that they're like, oh, I want to hunt and you should not be in there. Well, then I go the next weekend, right? If this is your Saturday in the month and you just want to go and, I don't know, go after a couple of badgers or whatever, it's your day. I can just reschedule and do my thing another time. So yeah, I think just go ask for it, have a dialogue, because you can learn so much.
Yeah, like I say, if you all you got to do is ask, right? Then the worst they could say is no. But if they do give you that permission, do not abuse it.
Yeah.
Stay away from those 5 foot tall fires, and yeah, for sure. So you and I were discussing also what are some of the differences that you find. I don't know if you've been in North America and practiced any bushcrafting or anything like that, but what are the differences that you would think between European bushcraft and North American bushcraft?
Yeah, well, I've never been there. That's still on my bucket list. But I have a good friend here. Her name's Stevie, and she used to live with the Ojibwe in a tiny town in a kind of like a longhouse and doing her homesteading thing there with her family. And we have a lot of exchange because we also talk about the outdoor or woodsman type of culture. And what I just realized from that is that here in Europe, we do this for some sort of recreational purpose or more as some sort of hobby. And I just want to really stress that we cannot compare a Northern American situation to the one that we have in Europe. Because again, you don't have the necessity to farm land. You got convenience everywhere. You got stores and infrastructure everywhere. So what you're doing here is you go out in order to just get a little peace of mind to experience a bit of nature once in a while. But it's not one of the core pillars of your life. It's not defining whatever's going to happen in the next 2 months, right? And if you're homesteading, for example, like Stevie does, you need to know how to handle animals. You need to know how to hunt. You probably can use guns, which you couldn't in Germany or so, because we've got very strict regulations here. When it comes to trapping, that's illegal for anyone. You can't just build like a figure 4 type of trap or so because you're violating the law, simply due to the reason that we don't have that much wildlife anymore. Mm-hmm. Then also, if you compare this to the Netherlands, like everybody's in deep shock because we got two single wolves back in the Veluwe, which is a national park in the Netherlands, actually the only one. And people are freaking out. Farmers are freaking out because that evil creature's back in town, so to speak, you know. And if you just go to Canadian landscapes or to Idaho or Alaska, then you can encounter bears and all these kind of things. And Europeans manage to basically drive back all that wildlife back into the depths of Russia, back into the depths of Bulgaria and such. So all this area somewhere between Spain, France, and Poland, you know, just Central Europe, has nothing in common with real, genuine wildlife or wilderness type of environments, geographically spoken, and also vegetation-wise and such.
I think a lot of that has to do with population density too. You know, how many people per square kilometer, you know, within the regions that you're in compared to what we have in Canada, right? Yeah. So that that's, and you know what, that's too bad because wolves are actually beautiful animals. Absolutely.
I had the pleasure to encounter them in wildlife one time in Bulgaria now I have to think what's the name again, Stara Planina, like the Balkan Mountains basically. And that was just on a distance of about like 600 or 700 meters, you know, very far away, and just looking at them with binoculars, and it was an amazing experience. Yeah, it's like they're like wild dogs, and I'm also a dog person, so I kind of like got a thing for wolves.
Yeah, so but also I think a big thing too between what you have for bushcrafting opportunities in Europe versus Canada, like, you know, we have a huge difference obviously in flora and fauna.
Yeah.
Right. So some of the we'll say some of the trees that you have there that you may be able to work with would be different, quite a bit different than what we have to work with here in North America. You know, even within North America, we have different areas where we have different types of things that we can work with. Give you a case and example. I mentioned a property that I have access to go out there and play house, right? Yeah. Essentially, it's all hardwood. You know, there's no pine trees, like there's no conifers out there at all, right? It's all deciduous trees. So for me to want to, say, for instance, build a bed of you know, birch needles or whatever, right? You can laugh because, yeah, like I say, I'm not a bushcrafter, but if I wanted to do that, I wouldn't be able to do it,
Yeah.
but I can rake up a lot of oak leaves and make a nice town that way, right? So, you have, in one hand, you have benefits, and the other hand, you don't, right? But, yeah. So, hey, if you ever want to come to Canada, open invitation. I got an extra spare room at the house here. You come on down, I'll show you Niagara Falls.
Well, I'll certainly take that offer, thanks.
So, what are your 3 most important tools?
The 3 most important tools.
XCs, but what if you had 3 tools you can carry with you, or 3 items?
Do these count as 2 already?
No, those are given.
All right. Yeah, well, because I think the most important tool always is your mind and your hands, basically, because you can make so much out of natural materials when it comes to bushcraft. But besides that, I would say, like, what works for everyone is Swiss Army knife or some sort of a multi-tool, Leatherman maybe. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Felix Immler from Switzerland. He's the first official Victorinox Swiss Army guru, so to speak. It's his job now. He also has a YouTube channel. I'm just going to drop his name in the chat, by the way. Look him up. It's really awesome. He built a boat with a Swiss Army knife. I'm not kidding. Wow. Like he's like the Qui-Gon Jinn or the Yoda of Swiss Army knives, so to speak. Yeah. Really great person. But what I mean by that, like with a multi-tool, you can do anything. Les Stroud, perfect example. If he does his Survivorman shows, you can do a lot with these things. So it brings us back to this entire idea that it's not all about gear, and it's not all about buying fancy stuff and certain types of parkas and I don't know what. You need to start off with the very basics and get familiar with that. Another important tool definitely is a hatchet. Like I would not want to miss my Grunsforce hatchet. Perfect for carving, perfect for the minor wood chopping type of tasks. It's a great self-defense weapon in case I would need it for whatever reason. Again, if I encounter mountain lynx or so, it's better to have that than nothing at all. I would say like these are kind of like the top things. And maybe a container, because what I personally find one of the most difficult things to do is boiling water or sterilizing water in pots that you make from natural materials like birch bark or so. It's kind of tricky. It's possible though, but that's a very difficult thing. So it's always good to have kind of like a billy can or a canteen or so, and then you're almost good to go because you don't
use one of them plastic bottles you find by the trail side.
Well, I gave that a try one time and it tasted horribly, so I will not do that again.
That's just my kick at the can for humor. Sorry. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I see. We got some people piping in some really good comments here tonight. Yep. I've been trying to pop a lot of green here. Even like Mama Bear here, she's saying she prefers a hatchet rather than an axe any day. And Rolf and I were talking about that there again in the green room about axe and hatchet safety, and some of the scary stories that we've heard of, and many of you may have seen different things where you're chopping a piece of wood and that thing deflects off, and there goes your shin, and you're wide open and possibly bleeding out. Any good tips for people there, Rolf?
Pay attention. That's number one. But besides, first of all, I would encourage anyone to do some kind of first aid education thing. Like in my particular case, I used to be a volunteer for the fire brigade, the youth fire brigade in my village. Since then, I always do at least 2 first aid courses a year just to keep that memory and the practice fresh. Practice CPR and all these kind of things, because you will need it once in a while. Also the same counts for applying bandages and all these kind of things. You need the practical experience, and accidents do happen all the time. Also happened to me. Again, if I'm just starting to carve something like this and I have to go this direction, even if I use the right technique and I lock my knife properly, I could slip, hit my thumb. Okay, and then it's time to take some action. And if we talk about hatchets, for example, maybe I should tell that story again, right? Of like that friend of mine, Thorsten, who also is a bushcraft instructor and used to live in Canada for 7 years, actually. Former military man, also medic during his military service. And he had this situation in which he explained to one of his seminar participants that he should always chop the wood on the back side of his chopping block. And 20 minutes later, he hears this terrifying scream because that boy basically hit himself like with one of those 900-gram type of splitting axe hats, like those big Fiskars or whatever things, and just went right through the shin bone and just basically split the leg apart like that. And then it's a matter of minutes because you can bleed to death from a severe injury like that. You got a traumatic injury. So luckily, Torsten is capable of applying a tourniquet in the proper way. You should definitely practice that because you will need this in case of any kind of severe injury that you can cause with a simple hatchet or even an axe in that case. And yeah, like in this case, it just went well because they could get him out with a helicopter and bring him to the next hospital, which was just like some 26 kilometers. So that's about like 18 miles, I guess, if I convert that. And yeah, it's just all about awareness. You know, a great tip is also if you work with hatchets, go down on your knees, chop things on the ground. You know, don't do that swing motion. Let the axe head do the work. There's a reason why it's designed like this, because it's like a wedge. It just drives through the wood all by itself. You don't need to apply force. You don't have to do weird kind of movements as if you're some kind of like ninja, right? That's the wrong way to approach it. And respect the tool. That's the most important thing, because even a tiny knife, if you just got a knife with a blade like this, can be enough to cause some kind of fatal injury. So learn about these things.
Yeah, you have to remember that an axe isn't, it's not a toy. It is a weapon. It is a dangerous implement. You know, it's not a macho thing to be able to split through a piece of wood with one swing. You know, if you use proper technique, like you say, being on your knees and using a stop block, and, you know, just cutting stuff that you're capable of cutting. You know, you don't always have to split the big logs for firewood. If you're finding deadfall, you know, do it in that way. And the one thing about a first aid kit, you know, first aid courses are a must for sure, right? Yeah. But you know what? A first aid kit in itself is good to have, but unless you know how to use it, is when it's really going to be something that is, you know, very, very useful. I was fortunate this year on a trip where one of the gentlemen that was on the trip with us, and this happened our second day into the trip, so we were fortunate that he was able to go seek medical help. He actually caught a branch on the corner of his eye from here all the way down here. It was like a broken branch sticking out of a tree, and it cut him open for 7 stitches. And my first aid skills, I was complimented by, well, he told me that I was complimented by the medic in town that we cleaned it up really good. And we actually stopped the bleeding for a gash that was like, you know, probably 4 inches long or 3.5 inches long. It cleaned up quite well, and we had it well cleaned and packaged. And like, you know, he went in. The only thing he had to do was go into the nearest town and go get some stitches. So, you know, you can have a first aid kit with all the gauzes and, you know, all the Band-Aids and all the, you know, the ointments and cleaners. And unless you know how to use it, train yourself, get some training. Like Ralf said, you know, get some first aid training. It's it can never hurt, whether it's in a bushcraft or an outdoor situation or right at your own home. You know, cut your finger open in the kitchen, you know how to fix that baby, right?
Yeah. And always make sure, it's really important to get kind of like those patches with the dinosaurs for the very, very bad injuries, right?
Yeah. You gotta have Mickey Mouse on there or something, right?
Absolutely. Those are the good ones.
Tom, one of our people in the chat's asking, what's your take on carbonless versus stainless steel, or carbon versus stainless steel?
In regards to knives, I assume, right? Or
yes.
Okay. Well, it's always a difficult issue because knives are like shoes. You know, what's the perfect pair of shoes? Are you going to play hockey? Are you going to work in a bank? Do you want to be a ballet dancer? You know, it's the same with knives. I personally think that carbon steel is great for beginners because it's a very soft type of steel, like a Mora Companion heavy duty or so. Costs you like $16, $17, right? And you can mess it up. If you mess up the knife, you can buy a new one. You can practice your sharpening skills. You can just fool around with it without having any big issues. The only other thing is that carbon steel really creates issues in terms of corrosion, in the sense that they can rust quickly. You need to maintain them properly. You have to do a lot of maintenance work if you want to keep your knife in a great condition, so that you don't have the problem with stainless steel. But then again, if you got a really hard steel, like for example, like a D12 type of steel, or what else, like those AC 420, I don't know. Like there's so many steels that have like a hardness on the Rockwell scale that surpass like the 58 to 62. That's the high segment on that scale. which usually is an also stainless variety. Yeah, that's more for the like edge retention, right? Because the harder the steel, the better your edge retention in theory. Carbon steel is a very soft material, so you can maintain and fix it much more easily if you get a chip or so. But this is all up to your preference, you just need to figure this out by yourself, because I also get different types of knives, starting from Mora to go like up to Falconeven F1 or so, which is one of my favorites, which also has like a convex grind, so it looks like this, right? So it's rounded, basically. It has a round bevel, and it doesn't have that Scandi grind that's flat, so it's more difficult to sharpen. I can only recommend people to go into a store, and just fool around with a couple of knives, just touch them, see if you like them, if they're comfortable, and start off with a carbon steel if you're a beginner. If you know how to treat steel, and you know how to sharpen other knives or difficult geometries, you can also go for the stainless. But it doesn't really add that much of an extra value to just go for high value stainless steel type of knives, in my opinion. Also, for the fact that a knife is a tool. If you're afraid to use your knife because it's too expensive and has too high of a value, you will not put it to use, and then it renders it useless. So just start with a simple, cheap knife, or not cheap, an affordable knife, right? Shouldn't be of cheap quality, but it should be affordable.
And you have a great little series on your YouTube channel about economy knives, or about different knives, and he really goes into depth. Ralf really goes into depth about different styles. Just watched the one the other day again for the your Swiss Army knife that you said I guess your dad had given you one when you were a young lad. Yeah. Excuse me. And yeah, you know what?
One of my favorites, by the way. It's still one of my most favorite knives because it does the job. So why do I want anything else?
One of my favorites is actually a Victorinox multi-tool. It's got all the things, and it never goes, or like it always goes on a trip with me. It's always on my hip. Even more so before my bushcrafting knife, which I have a couple really nice ones. But the one thing I will say about knives, and you touched on it, is to actually, I got caught up at one point where I had purchased a knife online. It was from a Canadian crafter out east, and I really fell in love with the knife. And I got the knife, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. But the one problem I have with it is I have a buggered up finger from a repair accident I was doing on a boat. So I can't actually close the finger, right? It doesn't want to close up. So when I try to grip this knife, the handle's not comfortable for me because the handle is too small. It might fit the knife maker very comfortably because he's got these little ham hocks, right? Yeah. But in my case, having a bigger hand and a finger that doesn't close, it's I've got a knife that I really admire because it's beautiful. It's a nice looking knife, beautiful scales, the whole 9 yards. But I got caught up in that thing where I wanted the knife. I went by sight. I was recently at an outdoor show in Barrie, Ontario, and I was talking to a bushcraft supplier guy that sells all kinds of stuff, everything from axes to ferro rods to pots and everything. And he had some knives there, and I started gripping some of these things, and some of them weren't the prettiest knives, but man, were they comfortable. Yeah, you know what I mean? I think the grip on a blade needs to be really, really good. It has to fit your hand, right? And in some cases, they might be able to tailor that, but yeah, it's a very good choice. And whether it had either a stainless steel or a high carbon steel blade, sometimes it's irrelevant. You don't always need the high carbon for striking a ferro rod. Ferro rods come with a little striker. You can use an old file, or what I mean. So there's other means for sure.
And maybe there's another thought on this. Like, okay, where do I start? Like, that we need to think of a couple of things that are essential to any type of tool. And I think number one is comfort, indeed, because let's say, for example, that you're working again on a project like this, and you're carving for some, let's say, prolonged periods, like 2 hours straight, and it's just into woodworking. You want something that's comfortable to your hand. You want something that's ergonomic in the sense that you don't want pressure points right here in your palm. You don't want any kind of blisters develop. And what people think, and what's also kind of like a marketing trick of a lot of technical knife manufacturers, is that they do these kind of handles that have all those bevels and all these finger imprint type of things, and then they look like super ergonomic, but it doesn't work. There's a reason why the ancient Romans built knives that simply had a round handle, just like an elliptical shape, Mora does this for the carving knives because you can just turn it in every direction. You know, you want to work backwards, forwards with push cuts, all these kind of things. So you want something that basically has just one smooth shape. And I go for the elliptical ones, or if it's for the Bushcraft knives, Mora Companion, way better than the Mora Robust or those things that have like the finger guard and everything, because you will feel that pressure in certain types of your hands. And this is something you should take into consideration. Because even if a knife is expensive and looks awesome on pictures and such, it might not do the job. The same accounts for all the blade geometries with serrations and such. Serrations are made for climbers mainly. That's for cutting rope, or if you're a sailor, for example, and you just need to cut some type of cordage, then it's perfectly fine. But if you want some kind of wood carving type of knife, you want a Scandi geometry, maybe even a convex one. I would not recommend the concave one, so basically kind of like those hollow grinds that just go like that, because they're very, very flimsy. They tend to break easily. But besides that, it's also important to really consider the actual field of application, because like try to look at it from this perspective. If you got a tiny tomato knife to cut a bit of food, for example, just for your food preparation, how does that relate to a machete? What's the difference? Why do they look different? Well, because they got two different fields of application, right? And that's the same thing for outdoor related tasks. If you want to do woodworking, simple geometries are the best. That's simply that. If you want some tactical kind of weapon to stab some person, so please don't do it, by the way, but if this kind of your thing to go, then you can go for all this tactical stuff, but it will not work in the outdoors.
Yeah, for sure. I see Woods Walker here just he's working on reducing his knife collection slowly. Few or just one is all you need. I believe it was Woods Walker, Wade is his name, by the way,
Yeah.
I was probably when I first started following Wade, he was actually having a giveaway, and he had a couple knives that he was giving away. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, look, he's giving away some really nice pieces there, right? But
I think here comes the fun fact. It's because I saw that it was about Beavercraft, right? Give me a sec.
Yeah, but you know what? But the fact that like the point I'm trying to make is he was giving away knives that somebody might be able to use, but he wasn't using. So rather than leaving a knife sitting there to rust and rot, he thought he would give it away because, as he said there, he's looking on. One knife is all you need, and learn to use it safely.
Yep.
Right. So good input there for sure.
Absolutely. And I can't agree more. Look, if you don't use your knife, again, it's useless, because tools are there to be used. And I see this a lot, especially with newcomers in the bushcraft scene, so to speak, or people that are especially young, that just turned 18 or so, and then they start collecting, and they want to do the same mistakes that I did. They will try to be that cool outdoors dude and try to prove a point, and then they buy a lot of stuff, and in the end it's useless. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those Rambo type of knives that were kind of like trending in the late 90s, where you could just unscrew that like the compass on the back, and then inside you had this kind of survival tool, but the tang wasn't holding up for a dime. You had the serrations on the back and the front, so you couldn't even carve that long of a blade. Well, what you're going to do, you're going to try to, I don't know, go and kill someone with that. Like it was not usable, because you kind of like had this machete type of thing, which was so flimsy and of kind of like Far East type of cheap quality, Well,
that's where Rambo kept his sewing kit, so he could sew up his arm. Remember?
Yeah, which brings us back to the first aid topic. Also, don't do that if you don't know how to. See that, like, there's also a lot of urban legends going around, and it's really funny because it's always that theoretical thing, the people have these assumptions, that you can prepare for everything and you can just, stitch yourself, and I don't know, you just need to, get 5 guns and a semi-automatic rifle, to just be the coolest survivalist and full camouflage. It's all not necessary. I know a lot of people that go out in their jeans and their regular clothing, carry a pocket knife, like Felix Imler does, for example, and thumbs up, those guys know what they're doing, because it's all about the skill. They're just regular John Does, but know their business. And then you got a lot of people that jump onto this kind of marketing train, which you will always, it will always remain, right? But just be a little critical, and just have a look around, just do a bit of research, because everybody can learn from others.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel Millett was saying there that he had one of them knives with,
Yeah.
you're showing your age, Daniel. You're showing your age. That's funny.
I wonder how his experience was like. Maybe you can share something about that. Like,
Yeah.
did you put it to any suitable use? And I also wonder, like, how did it work out when you try to use this kind of like this kind of saw thing? You know, those emergency saws with those two metal rings. Like, I found them horrible. I tried to saw through a branch like that thick, and it just broke apart.
Yeah. Well, there again, you know what? They were really a novelty in their day, and I'm sure they have their purpose. I guess if you're going all banshee through the forest, you know, like you're trying to make a movie, kind of like us as YouTubers, but no, you know what I mean? It's I've never owned one. I think it's more of a showpiece than it is a practical weapon or a practical tool. So.
Yeah. I think it's all about the marketing again, because of course, like, I mean, who didn't watch Rambo? Guilty as charged, you know, I watched them all. It's entertaining.
Didn't they
But
just come up with another Rambo? Wasn't there just recently, within the last year or so, another Rambo movie?
yeah, and there's something coming up or so. Like, I'm not really on track, but there was something new indeed. But it's the same thing also with Bear Grylls, by the way. While we're talking about entertainment and kind of like this pop culture and cinematic type of thing that goes with survival. Like, maybe some of you folks know the knife of Gerber. Great company, they make great products, but the Bear Grylls knife is total trash. At least that's my opinion. You know, it's just like putting that brand stamp on top, and then just, you know, people buy this because they think like, hey, I want to be like Bear Grylls. Funny thing, also the Les Stroud knife that he issued is also total trash. I did not expect that. I thought he could do better, but the design just doesn't work for crafting.
I think he's got 3 different models of Les Stroud, right? So there again, I think it's a preference of what type. But as soon as you start branding, or, you know, I don't know. Like I say, a knife is a specialized tool, and I think everybody should, if you're looking on the market for a knife, is get out there and do some looky, feely, touchy, right? You know, you look at Mora knives. Mora knives are really good. They do actually have very comfortable grips on them and stuff. And given the price, they're great tools that if you snap the blade or something happened to it, that you don't have to cry because you're not losing a $400 knife or a $300 custom crafted knife, right? So.
And again, by the end of the day, you know, it's also, again, important to understand that it's all about the field of application, because bushcraft is a very specific field. You know, you're mainly working with wood. That's kind of like the bottom line. But if you're a fisherman, for example, and you need some kind of specialized knife that's great for cutting out fillets or whatever kind of things, you know, you might go for a completely different product. Again, also brings us back to those hook knives for making spoons and these things. You know, you just hollow out that piece of wood if you just work with it like that. Same thing, every knife has a different purpose and they all have a right to exist. It's just about trying to, you need to figure out for yourself, I mean, what you want to apply that to. Yeah, that's kind of like the bottom line.
A situation with one of them hook knives this summer. I was starting to work on a Kusa, and I never got very smart because I got my thumb. I'll admit it, but I knew how to use my bandages because I practiced with my first aid kit and I patched myself up, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've hit the 8 o'clock hour here. This is when I generally do my my swag giveaway for those that are in the house. What we're going to do is just like we've done in the past weeks. I'm going to call out a couple letters. If everybody wants to hit their caps lock on their keyboard right now, so that when I tell you the 2 letters, pop them up there. And I'm going to give away 2 sets of Canoehound Adventure decals. And I got to check supply, but I might even also throw in a couple of patches, embroidered patches for you to sew on your backpack, your hat, grandma's forehead. I always say that. Anyways, so we'll let's go this one here. Can you guys predict the letters? If you guys want to pop up there, RB Rathwulven Bushcraft, and we will we'll give away a couple of these decals. I've got the numbers written down on here, the magical clipboard, and we'll get that going. So let's get you guys populated. Type in those letters, RB. Got no takers tonight.
Well, shall I type them then?
We need an air horn or something to wake everybody up, right? So while that's going on, just want to welcome a couple new people here into the live stream. I see Spartan EDS Warriors popped in. My good friend Andy K from over in Britain is here, and we got Rain Dance Bushcraft, somebody from Montreal, Canada. So got
hi all.
people in here tonight. Oh, look, Cheryl Rogers wants to win. That's my wife. How you doing? Good to see you. How's bowling going? My wife is the athlete in the family. She's bowling tonight. So, RB, we need RBs. Come on, people. Nobody wants my stickers? If not, I'll use them. Look, they go really good on water bottles. There we go. So that's all cool stuff. And don't worry, Ralph, you'll get yours in the mail.
Perfect.
So what do we got here? Let's see here. Well, I guess everybody's in. That's good. Woot, woot. We got a woot, woot in the crowd. Okay, so I got 2 numbers written down, and we got number 3 and number 12. So I don't think we have 12 people that have input, but we got Mama Bear's backpack is number 3. So I'm just going to put Mama Bear. And number 12. Ooh, who's the very last person to input besides my wife? We'll go with Spartan EDS Warrior. So, oh, wait a sec. No, I gotta go with Spartan there. So we got Spartan EDS Warrior. So I'm gonna pop my my email address on the screen. And what I need you to do is I need you to email me your full mailing address, and I will certainly get out the sticker packs for you by the end of the week. You can send that email to canoehound@gmail.com. And also, if anybody has any ideas for future shows or something that you'd like to see on the show, also drop me a line there so that I can start looking into different things. As I mentioned, I have a couple of great guests coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I still got a few spots to fill to complete the 2019 season. So, yeah, let's get some ideas. Let's get some interested people here.
Well,
And
I have an idea, actually.
sure.
May I see a show about Mama Bear's backpack's grandma with the sticker on the forehead?
There you go. You know what? It's funny. I always ask in the email, or when I email the people back, that I'd love to see a picture of where you have stuck at least a sticker. And I've got a couple back. Seems to be most commonly people are putting them on their water bottles. And that's great because they will, as I say, they'll last even in the dishwasher. This has been through the dishwasher a number of times, and they're high quality, so they'll last you a good little while for sure. All righty, so we're at that point. Let's see. There we go. Mama Bear says she will stick it on Grandma's forehead. That is awesome. So at this point, this is the point in the show where I will open up. I will post a link here. And if anybody would like to join into the panel there and ask Rolf or myself any questions, we'd love to have you on. We'll get a little bit of general chat going till about 9 o'clock. And then we'll call it quits at that time. So here is the link. If anybody wants to join in, come on in. So, Rolf, what have you got planned for the near future? Any big adventures going on or anything like that?
Well, not particularly at the moment. I'm just trying to sort out a couple of things, just to maybe build a website, because so far I'm just doing everything on social media and such, but I just want to get a proper website up and running soon. Yeah, what else? Like I'm trying to figure out where I want to travel, because I'm kind of like in need of a vacation, but I don't have a destination yet.
Right.
It would be awesome really to leave Europe and just maybe go even to a Southeast Asian type of country, just to kind of like have a complete change of scenery. That would be awesome.
Right. Now, you being a bushcraft instructor, how would people get in contact with you to perhaps seek your knowledge?
Well, it's pretty simple. Like, you can, of course, visit the channel. You can then also find the email address there. And if you just go to the header, you will find all the links. So I think that's the easiest way. Just click on the name down in the chat, or basically on the link. I don't know, can I share that myself, or can you share that?
Yeah, let me just, I'm going to moderate you on the live chat. If I could find one of your instances here. There you go. I will moderate you on the chat, and then you can feel free to There you go. You can post a link, or one of the moderators, if you don't mind posting the link to your YouTube channel. Or
all right, let's give that a try. Let's see if that works.
And I encourage everybody that's in the live stream tonight to feel free to, make sure you go over and check out Rathwulven Bushcraft. You'll find his content very entertaining, very knowledgeable, and very well put together. I've noticed that of late your editing skills have become pretty good.
Well, I hope so, because the fun fact, this was also part of one of my minors in my studies, so I hope that I'm doing kind of like an all right job there. But yeah, thanks, great to hear. And also, by the way, if you folks got any type of feedback or anything you'd like to see or so, also just spit it out, because it's always great to get some kind of input from other folks. Brings up some new ideas, right? Maybe it brings up some criticism that I can learn from. So let's just have that exchange. For me, that's the most important thing, just to kind of like go into some kind of dialogue, because that's how things are done, right? Together.
Yeah. Who's been your biggest inspiration for what you do?
In regards to bushcraft, certainly Morse Kochanski.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like it's a must read for anyone who wants to be an outdoors man or outdoors woman. Ray Mears, of course, it's just the way he engages with nature. Yeah, who else? A lot of people that I know personally, which you folks probably don't know, like Julius is a great guy. He's a part of the Bushcraft Freunde too. Daniel Meyer, the guy that I was talking about who did the Alpine crossing. I can actually look for the documentary if you want to, and I just share the link. Worth watching. He suffered so much when he was walking from southern Germany all the way to Italy. Like they were in so much pain, but they did it. Really amazing documentary. Even if you should not understand any kind of talk there, doesn't really matter. Just the facial expressions are already worth watching.
is that on a YouTube channel?
Yeah, and he was also accompanied by national television, actually.
Right.
And he also has this nice story, because they trained for 6 months, and then the camera team had this kind of chubby 2 meter tall guy, who was completely out of shape, but still outrun them with the camera equipment on the back up the mountains, because he was from that area. And so really, he has a lot of funny stories about that. But he's definitely an inspiration also. Back to the question, in the sense that he kind of like taught me a lot about the power of will, I would say, and how important it is to manage yourself, to ground yourself within yourself, which is a very important thing, in my opinion, also to do if you just want to go through life. And yeah, besides that, there's so many inspirations. Felix Immler is one for his work with the Victorinox knife. But besides that, there's many other inspirations. People that engage in mindfulness, for example, meditation, also in eco-sustainability. Like there's so many people that I can't really list them all here. But yeah, I guess everybody can be an inspiration, for as long as it's all about integrity and reason and just like an open mind into towards the world, right? That's kind of like what I think.
Yeah. So see somebody else that just popped into the stream here, Sty North. He's a regular on the show here, and I'm a regular on one of his live streams. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, Ralph, but
not yet.
Have you ever met Sty?
Not yet, I think, but maybe he wants to join the panel, right?
Yeah. If he wants to join in the panel, as he usually does like to, come on in, Sty. Here's an invite for you. If I can find my paste button, there we go. But yeah, we've been talking tonight with Rolf here from Rathwulven Bushcraft, basically just about different bushcrafting type of things. Not so much a lesson, but just more of a chat about the whole thing. I just lost my train of thought. You know what we call that in Canada? A brain fart.
Yeah. we call it the same thing here, and we don't even have a translation for that. So it's also brain fart, if you would say it in both German and Dutch. So
I had the pleasure this summer of meeting a fella on one of my canoe trips. He is down from Germany. One of my friends, who is the owner of Kid Products, he is of German descent. And he had a childhood friend come down to visit him, and we took him on an Algonquin Park canoe trip for 3 days. And that's where I got a lot of my knowledge about, Germany being very limited in space for bushcrafting and things of that sort. Some of the people that I follow also, I believe Survival Lily, she's from Germany, is she not?
She's Austrian, actually.
Austrian? Okay. That's
Yeah.
kind of in the region, right? Forgive
Close
me.
to us, definitely. Like, don't tell that to a Northern German; they will will be a little confused.
Hopefully not too many are watching there then. But I know that there's a lot of situations. Somebody in the stream earlier up above asked, have you ever found any World War II relics in your experiences out in the bush doing bushcraft?
Not really. I wasn't really looking for that. So, I did go to lost places though. Like, funnily enough, I went to now I have to think, what was the name? Belitzer Heilstätten. That's kind of like Hitler's private hospital close to Berlin. It was also a really interesting thing because a friend of mine knew some kind of secret passage through the forest that went into that area. Really beautiful type of site, in the sense that all those roofs have been bombarded by the Soviets, and now there's forest growing out of those roofs. Really insane thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of like the only real World War II kind of thing.
Actually, I had a bit of a brain fart there. It wasn't Survival Lily. I think it was Wild Woman Bushcraft.
Wild Woman.
Vanessa, yeah.
I believe she's from the German area. She actually did one of her videos was basically based on that there, where she was in a restricted area because I guess there was a lot of still live ammunition or bombs or whatever, or even mines or what have you in the ground. And it was, kind of a scary, that'd be the last place I'd want to do a video for sure. Ralf, this is Sty, Ralf.
Hey man, how are you doing?
Tonight, Sty.
Nice to meet you, Ralph.
My pleasure.
Yes, anybody in the bushcraft world, love to meet them. Yeah, and I just started following you.
Great. You need to send me your channel too. Like, what was your nickname again? The Northern Wilderness Excursion?
Wilderness Thriving Fundamentals was my camp. Was the camp I had. Yeah. And I'm retired now. Yeah. I'm retired. I'm not retired from the outdoors. I'm just retired from teaching folks about the outdoors in general. I guess I don't do it for pay anymore. I just, if folks are interested, I'll take them outdoors.
Yeah.
Sty likes to go out and play in the bush, pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I do.
That's what I say. You can't really, or shouldn't really, classify yourself as a bushcrafter. You play or you practice the craft of bushcraft, right? I guess that's a good way to look at it too, right, Rolf? Is you don't always have to be classified as a bushcrafter. You know the art of bushcraft, or you have bushcraft.
I cannot stress this enough. We need to let go of all those labels, because, survivalist, bushcrafter, prepper, I don't care. You're a human being. You enjoy nature, and that's what you do.
Yeah,
right.
What am I supposed to say? Like, hey, I'm a forest guy or a forest dude. It doesn't really matter. I think.
You just won me over, Ralph. Won me over. Yeah. And I've gotten, I've done some videos about, am I a bushcrafter? And bushcraft or BS. That's, to me, you're BSing yourself to say that you're not a bushcrafter. You're BSing yourself to say I'm only a bushcrafter.
Yeah.
We're humans. We're all people, and what I want is people to get in the outdoors and learn the harmony of the outdoors.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And experience how they can live with the outdoors instead of in it. And that was my camp. That's why we called it Wilderness Thriving Fundamentals, because we wanted people to be able to go into the wilderness and make it their second home. Yeah. Without leaving a trace. You don't want to leave a scar on the outdoors when you leave, but if you learn the right if you got a good base skill set, you can go in the outdoors and fare quite fine. And we just want folks to be able to experience it and learn some primitive skills.
And that's what I say. We were mentioning earlier in the stream, I don't know if you're here, Sty, but I was saying that I am not a bushcrafter. I am a paddler. I'm an outdoorsman. I enjoy all kinds of sports, anything from like mountain biking to snowshoeing in the wintertime. It's all it's all about getting out for me. But watching fellas like Ralf here and learning some skills, because I also mentioned that I've learned a lot of stuff from Ralf, and a lot of others online. And you could take that as a compliment, because you know what? If I learned something from you and somebody else has learned something from you, then you've accomplished what you set out to do, Ralf.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, that's also great to hear. Like, I always love it if I get that type of feedback. Not because I think like, yeah, now I'm awesome, but it's just awesome to see that people are really taking something out of that, because I know how it feels for me. If some people, like, probably you guys know Lonnie from Far North Bushcraft or so, right?
Yeah, everybody knows Lonnie.
Yep.
I love this man so much because he's just this kind of like down-to-earth type of bear, that's just sitting there and just explains stuff, and whatever you take along for free. He's just out there for sharing these things. And that's a really great mindset, and if I can do the same thing, maybe also for the upcoming generation, that's awesome. Because what I do feel like is we really kind of like get out of touch with nature, at least as modern men. We're not the primitive men we used to be some 20,000 years ago.
No.
But the closer we can get to this, the more I guess we can reconnect with everything that's important in life. We come from nature, we go back to nature, regardless of your belief system or whatever kind of thing, right? So.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah, no, there's somebody that would make a great guest on this show. Is Lonnie.
Yeah.
All right, hold Lonnie. I see we got somebody else here looking to pop in. How you doing, Daniel?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Can you hear me okay?
Nice to meet you, Daniel.
Perfectly fine.
Can hear you good.
Good.
So what's up tonight? Just enjoying the show, hopefully?
Yeah. I thought I'd jump in and chat with you guys. I've been watching a few shows thinking, I got to jump in there and chat a bit, but here I am.
Part of this format, is we can get in here and we can all enjoy each other's company and learn something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your poison? What do you like to participate in? Are you just the general outdoorsman, or?
Yeah, kind of. I'm kind of a born-again bushcrafter. Came back into it maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, and kind of learned that bushcraft is knowledge and tools. Then after learning, participating in different activities, then I wanted to go out and practice. So it was out in the canoe, and it was out in the kayak, and it was out in backcountry camping. And just developing things from there and using those tools that I'd pick up, from just basic bushcraft knowledge. And of course, it's endless. You have so much to learn, but it's best. Practice is one thing. Using it's a whole other thing. Right. So that's where I am right now. I'm trying to get out there and use those skills as much as possible.
Application.
Mm-hmm. And adaptation.
You learn those skills and then get out there and apply them. That's it. Yeah. Our camp, we had our Thriving Basics camp, 7 days. Then we had a 7-day intermittent class, and then if you completed the first 2, then we would let you do an immersion class, and that was 5 days. And that was on your own to go out there and actually apply the skills you learned from the first 2 sessions. And I only had a total of 7 people that did the immersions, and they come out of it with flying colors. They said, I can't believe I was able to go out in the woods. The end of November, snow, it's cold, it's nasty. And I came out in as good a shape as I went in. And I was just so proud of them that they were able to apply the skills they learned, but it was controlled. They felt comfortable because I was there. I was there. I provided advice, but I wouldn't get my hands dirty for them. But it was so enjoyable to see people connect, with the outdoors. And so many of them said just what you said, Daniel, is they're coming back into bushcrafting. And a lot of them didn't realize they had been bushcrafting through their years anyway. And they go, oh, does this fit into bushcrafting? And I always tell people, bushcrafting, look at the 2 words. You're in the bush and you're crafting. That's really what bushcrafting is about, is developing crafts from the available resources. And it's endless. Like Daniel said, there's so much, it's almost endless. Daniel, by the way, where are you located?
I'm in Ontario, in Canada.
You are in.
Okay. Not too far from some of these other guys. I'm right down on Lake Ontario, actually, in southern.
Wow.
So I have to wander north a little bit to get out to the nice lands.
Sure.
I'll pick you up on the way, Daniel.
All right.
There you go. Yeah, I'm located, so that you're aware, I'm in northern Wisconsin. I'm about 3 blocks from Lake Superior. Yeah, I've been up here for 33 years now.
Oh, nice part of the country. I've been through there a couple of times. It's actually a shortcut to get through to the Western Canada, is to cut through the U.S. and through some of those states.
Right. Dip down through upper Michigan, through Wisconsin, Minnesota, and up you go.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I spent 4 years up in northwestern Montana. I took my family off grid for a full year up in the backcountry in the Cabinet Wilderness, and I hated leaving Montana. I just hated it, but northern Wisconsin, yeah, I'm good enough with it.
Yeah, so we got Kevin Callan's asking Ralph here. So what's their top wilderness place you'd want to travel to if you went to Canada?
Yeah, I already typed all of them, maybe. I really don't know. Like, give me suggestions,
Well, you know what? There's a lot. Canada's a very vast country. Like, we've got everything from mountains and ocean coast to, rugged wilderness of the North Country, right?
And prairie.
Ontario, northern Ontario, like there's quite literally 1 million lakes that you can explore if you're into, paddle sports and stuff like that. But, oops, wrong one. But if you're into, if mountains are your things and you're going to want to hit the West Coast, and Canada's, there's a lot to see.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it in a week, for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well,
You're not going to do it in a lifetime. Come on.
Yeah, but I would say like boreal forests are still something. That's an area that I really would like to explore. It doesn't matter where. It's just about the experience, just to be in a forest so remote that it's actually beyond comprehension,
Right.
Been in a few of those.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I got a few people like that. Obviously, some of the people in the stream here are from my area. I'm right in the heart of southern Ontario, or not southern Ontario, the Niagara region. So, if you put your finger right in the middle of the Niagara region, you'll find probably Dennis. You'll put a on that head, right? Ralph, a question that we didn't really touch on: your foraging skills.
Yeah.
How did you go about learning? You've shown a lot of different things in your videos. Things, making teas to, edible plants and mushrooms and things of that sort. Where did you get that skill set?
Yeah, well, I think it's also about constant studies because like right here, I do have my bookshelf and there's about 30 different books on plant identification. I don't know what. And this is all kind of like the work that I did throughout the last 10 years because I started off by learning very simple things from my grandma. Very simple things like identifying the common nettle, for example, or identifying plantains or these type of very simple herbs. And at some point, you just kind of like gain this interest. And what I did for myself is that I said, okay, I'm going to study one plant a week. I think I mentioned that before, that if you just take one plant a week and you just go out and you learn about this, you touch it, you kind of like have a look at the geometry, how it's growing, like all the kind of attributes that this plant has. So you can learn a lot because within a year you learn about 52 different types of plants if you just do one a week. And if you just do like 10 a year, that's also perfectly fine. You just need to be busy, and just really work with your senses. You need to read the theory, but at the same time you need to go out and just experience different types of plants. You also need to make mistakes. You need to be in doubt. For example, let me try to come up with something. Elderberry would be a great one. I think everybody knows how an elder bush looks like, or you maybe had some elder syrup or whatever. But there's one toxic variety. How do you distinguish them? It's all about observation and just learning and constantly repeating this kind of information. And that's kind of like how you get into this. And just start with simple things. If you can learn about 3 plants this year, before the end of the year, you already did a great job. You don't need to learn everything about botanics, because I'm also not an expert on that field. I just know what I know. And next year I will know more. And then the next year I will know more, and so on and so on.
That's something I've been doing this summer. I really started trying to concentrate on learning, the obvious, plants here, besides your berries and stuff like that. But, just trying to identify a few different plants that I could say to my buddies, hey, man, we can make a really cool tea out of this, a nice Labrador tea or something like that, right? And it's kind of good to know, not even for the survival skills, but it's really cool that if you're on a canoe trip or you're on a hiking trip or you're just on a backcountry camping trip, that, you can identify something and say, hey, let's have some spruce tea tonight, cedar tea. You know what I mean? It's something a little different.
Yeah, it gets very exciting when you find something that and you can use it. For me, it's wintergreen. Whenever I come across that, I just like, I got to make some tea.
Yeah,
it's very exciting. So it's.
I've got my very first mushroom that I could really easily identify, and you Ontario boys might be able to recognize this too. It's called a lobster mushroom.
Oh yeah.
And found out about this by mistake. Well, not by mistake. We met these guys over at a campsite alongside of a road, right, on this one lake up north. And the guys in the back of their truck had these big styrofoam containers, and they were out foraging for mushrooms. And the one guy says, hey, you ever seen one of these? And I looked, I go, the hell is that? He says, it's called a lobster mushroom. And it looks like a cooked lobster tail. It kind of has that resemblance. I'm not a mushroom guy. I can't stand like button mushrooms on pizza or anything like that.
Well, I feel that.
I'll eat it all day. Yeah. So it's pretty neat when you can find that. You're walking along a portage and you go, oh, mushroom, dinner tonight, right? Going with steak. So yeah.
No, it's a fulfilling feeling, when you can gather from nature and just add something to whatever you're bringing. It's awesome.
Yeah. There we go. I like Brian's take on things. He likes gin made from junipers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I like the liquid berries myself.
No problem.
Well, that's like with me with the shaga hunting out. I'll take folks out that have lived here in the North Country their whole lives, and I'll go, whoa, check out that big piece of shaga on that birch, and they'll go, what? That big knot in the tree? That big ugly knot in the tree? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they'll go, what are you writing down? I said, writing down where it is, because I'm coming back in January for that bugger. and they're just like, what are you going to do with that? Yes. Oh, I tell you what, there's so many things out there that, and I like how Ralph's approach, because, it's just added knowledge. Why not? Even if you never do actually end up using it, at least you know of it and you're aware of it. It's great. That's like when I was actually a kid at the time, learning what you can do with cattails. I mean, you talk about an edible plant. I mean, there's an awful lot you can do with a cattail. You got the pollen, you got the baby ears, you got the root base, there's so much you can do with them. And then they come in real handy. I mean, I've woven baskets with them. They're endless. Yeah. But most people just go, oh, that's that fuzzy thing. I don't want to touch that.
It's funny. Sty was poking fun at me there on one of my big canoe trips this year. I come across a birch tree, and you can start laughing now if you want, Sty.
Okay. Yeah. I got a kick out of it.
A couple pieces of chaga, right? Because I looked at it so quick, and then when I come back, we started cutting at these things. It was just a couple of really nice birch burls, right?
Yeah, I had a couple of burls.
Working so hard trying to find some chaga, and finally, Thanksgiving weekend this year, we're at a hike up in the Kawarthas, and I come across this birch tree that had like 3 or 4 good softball-sized pieces of chaga hanging off the side, right? I'll be darned if they weren't like 12 feet up.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you, man, I tried to figure everything I could to get them, but I know where the tree is, and next year I'm going back with a pole saw. And if they're still there,
Yeah, that's what you need.
yeah.
Pole saw works. I've had people say, "Oh, don't use a pole saw on that. That's not good for the tree or the shaga." Just baloney. I tell you, with a pole saw, you see a nice piece that's really protruding, and you get on it with this pole saw, you know you're leaving enough shaga behind that it will grow back. A lot of times people over harvest, they'll take it right down to the inner bark of the tree, and a lot of times that just quickens the death of the tree, and the shaga doesn't come back. But yeah, it's.
But it will come back if you leave a good base in it. If you leave a good chunk of it in the tree, it will regenerate, right?
I've got a tree. Well, my video on harvesting shaga, that actual piece of shaga that I removed. Now that's about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. That shaga has grown almost 2 inches since then, and it's now completely enclosed itself again. That piece of shaga, I figure, was about 20 years old when I harvested it. And I got 40,000 views, over 40,000 views on that video, and it got the most negative comments. Everybody telling me how I did it wrong and on and on. And I go back there and I look, and the shaga's growing back just fine. The tree's healthy as sin. And I told them on the back of this tree is another piece of shaga bigger than the one I'm harvesting, and that gets to stay. That piece now, if I harvested that, I know it would be at least a 25-pound piece of shaga. It's huge. It's a huge piece.
Get it.
What if I may throw in a question here? Like, this is a really interesting topic, because I thought quite some times that I found chaga, and it always used to be some kind of burl of some sort, or some kind of other kind of fungus or whatever, because it was really solid. It was not crumbly in the middle. So how can I really distinguish genuine chaga from whatever else?
The best way to distinguish it is you get to it. If you can take your knife, it should have a black, almost tarish colored exterior, scaled. It'll be all broken up and very hard. Take your knife and break into it. And if it's got a copper colored core and it's almost sponge like, that's shaga. That you can guarantee yourself. And if it's growing on any of the birch, white, yellow, silver birch, it doesn't matter. If it's on a birch, you're guaranteed. If it's got that copper core and that hard black outer crust, it's shaga.
Will it grow on other trees or just on birches?
They do grow on some of the lindens and some other trees, but rarely, very rare. I tell people just avoid those. Just watch for the birch. They've done chemical analysis on them, and they found that those that grow on white birch actually produce the most potent shaga off of the white birch. But then again, I'm a believer in birch polypores too. So and they have a very high medicinal property to them. So it's got something to do with that darn birch tree. I tell you what, a birch tree's got a lot of resources in it.
Tell me about it.
A little gold mine growing there.
Absolutely. And it's the easiest tree to identify. It's almost as if nature kind of like created this white shiny tree to tell you, like, this is what you need. Build your canoe from that, get firewood, have your tinder material, have your birch polypore to build plasters. Like, birch sap, very nutritional and very healthy.
That's it. And see, I worked for several Ojibwa tribes up here in the northern region, and became quite the traditionalist with the tribal members. And it's amazing for everything we can think of that you could use a birch tree for. You talk to an old Native American and he'll give you 10 more reasons to use it and what to use it for. They use it for everything, and it's nature's aspirin too. You got a toothache, break yourself off a nice juicy bit of the end of a branch and just put it in your mouth and slowly chew it up. It'll numb your gums and it'll stop the toothache because it acts like aspirin. Birch is a wonder tree to me.
It's a great tree.
Now, Rain Dance Bushcraft, that's Jess is asking, what's the difference between chaga and horseshoe fungus? Horseshoe, huge difference. Well, first off, you won't find horseshoe fungus on anything other than a dead birch tree, whereas chaga is not. If you find chaga on a dead birch tree, they say it also loses all its nutritional blah 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 blah. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't lose it all. It doesn't. See, that's a misnomer. A lot of people say, "Oh, never use chaga off of a dead tree," and it's a misnomer. It loses about 30 to 40% of what it would be on a healthy tree, but 30 to 40% loss of a nice prime piece of chaga, you still got more nutrient value in that bad piece of chaga than you're going to get off of anything else. So,
right.
I harvest chaga off of dead trees. The problem is if you see a tree die, that chaga starts to shrink. It actually starts to shrink, and it disappears. It's dying with the tree. The chaga has to have the tree to survive. So,
So just to touch base for those of you that are not familiar with with this discussion as far as chaga and horseshoe fungus. If you're not familiar with horseshoe fungus, what it is it's a fungus that grows on the side of a dead birch, whether it's upright or on the ground, and it can be most easily identified. Just look at the bottom, and it looks just like a horse hoof. It has sort of like the hollow spot like a horse hoof would have. I actually have a good example of it in one of my videos, the Algonquin trip. If you look at my and this isn't an advertisement, but if you look at the thumbnails, the one with the big chimney on it, watch that video and you'll see a good example of horseshoe fungus. And really, I don't think it has any other property that other than when it's well dried, it makes a great fire tinder.
Yep, great tinder.
It also makes a great fire carrier. If you can put spark to that and just get a smoldering spark, you can actually carry that and transfer it a la Survivor Man from one camp to another and be able to start a fire with it again. But it takes a little tending to get to. But yeah, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it has any edible properties, does it?
I've never heard it used edibly, as an edible, but yeah, it's got great other properties. Here
we go.
Here's a perfect example. I got my current box in front of me, but that's the outer. That's what you'll see is that black on the outer. Now, some of this copper that you can see through it wouldn't be showing because I've been beating on this with a hatchet. But the core of it is a nice copper.
I need to get me some of that.
And you can see that flat face. I actually will saw hearth boards out of this. Usually I just break it up for tea. Well, this is a perfect one for how you see them growing on a tree. Now the copper portion is what's attached to the tree. This is what was sticking out of the tree. You can see this was along the edge of the tree. This end was in a scar in the tree. And this is what was exposed. So that's what chaga looks like when you find it on the tree. And a piece like this, for me, that's about 6 months worth of tea. And but this piece I showed you with the flat face on it, I take and I just use a bushcrafting folding saw. Sometimes I'll use a hacksaw because it's finer, but what I do is I cut boards that are about maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. And I use those as hearth boards for bow drill and hand drill. You drop that board in your pack, that Chaga board in your pack in a Ziploc bag. It keeps it dry, and you can throw a hand drill on that. People that can't do hand drill, can't master it, get a piece of Chaga and make a hearth board, and I guarantee you, you're going to get an ember with a hand drill, and you'll just be proud of yourself.
That's great.
I just want to apologize to Daniel and Sty, because you're on the bottom sector of the thing there. I'm going to be popping up comments once in a while or questions.
Oh, sure. Yeah, cover me up.
Apologies for covering you up. I'm not trying to actually do that, but I do have a question here from Kevin here at KC Happy. There you go. Look over it above. Yeah. Ralph, Kevin's asking, what's the best wilderness place to go in your region?
Well, in the north of Europe, especially in the Netherlands, you won't really find any type of wilderness. I think the best you can do is the Veluwe National Park, but it's a really small area, in my opinion. You could rather go to the Alps, I would say, because then, like, it's also kind of like a disclosed area in the sense that you have a lot of skiing resorts and all these things, but you can get lost there. Whereas if you go to Northern Europe, in the sense of North and Central Europe, you won't really find a chance. Otherwise, go to Sweden or Norwegian, like the Norwegian areas, especially the north, close to where the Sami people are, like north of Finland. Also great areas to travel. So either just go all the way up north or go to the south. That's the best recommendation, but don't really get to the core central area of Europe, in my opinion.
And how about paddling opportunities? Because I know Kevin is a very renowned canoeist, so...
Well, then there's a recommendation for northern Germany, actually, northeast, close to Poland. It's called the Mecklenburgische Seenplatte, which just is like an area with a lot of tiny lakes. I'm going to type that out, and you can just Google that and just have a look at it for yourself. Just give me a second. So here we go. That's kind of the area in northeast Germany. It's basically untouched. It's barely, like, there's barely any settlements, barely any infrastructure, and a lot of tiny lakes that are connected with natural creeks, but also with canals. And there's a lot of tourist opportunities there too. So if you just type that in, you will find plenty of opportunities, especially for canoeing and kayaking and all these kind of things.
Excellent. There we go. Sorry, guys. I know we were in a good conversation about chaga and stuff. But, I must say that if I had chaga, I would not be turning it into a hearth. I'd be
that's the thing is, I've got such an abundance of chaga. People yell at me, "You're cutting hearth boards? Are you crazy?" And you were talking about carrying fire, chaga. I learned a good lesson. I had a nice big hearth board. I did a hand drill fire for one of my group of students and showed them. And after you get your ember, you just tip your knife and you just cut the ember out of it, and you put that in your bird's nest and get your fire going, and then spitting that in the pit from doing the hand drill to make sure the ember's out. Well, I did all those, and I threw that in my pack, in my rucksack, and we went off camping. We're going to go camp in another location that night. And I'm walking along, all of a sudden I heard all this laughing, and I turned around to look, and I saw smoke between me and my my students. And I go, what the heck's going on here? What's burning? And they go, you. I dropped my pack, and sure enough, that chaga hearth board, I did not get the ember out, and it was still alive in the board. It was still alive. So I hiked for 4 hours with a live ember in my chaga. So, and then I talked to some of the elders with the tribe here, and they said, oh yeah, we used to transport fire that way. They said right up until into the 1800s, we used to move fire from one camp to another using chaga. And so yeah, it's, it's interesting. It's just one of thousands of things we can learn out there,
That was Mama Bear, by the way.
Uh-huh.
We're a couple.
Oh, nice to meet you, Mama Bear. How you doing?
Yes, hi, Mama Bear.
If I had a light bulb over my head, it would have just gone off. Ding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it takes us a little longer to get actually bright. We're like a fluorescent light that has to warm up.
Yeah. So Sty, you know what they say about hindsight, right? I brought up that part of the video there where I thought I found chaga, and I found instead it turned out to be these nice burls, right?
Yep.
Well, in my disappointment after I finished cutting them things off, it's like, damn, I threw them, right? Not until later did I realize, wow, man, I could have like carved a nice little bowl out of that beautiful first burl or something like that. It's like, double loss, double fail.
Yeah. Throwing away resources.
So, Sty, how do you prepare your chaga? Do you grind it up, or some people just take chunks and just boil the chunk? Or
okay. Here we go with chaga lesson, right?
I guess we're on the subject. So
usually I'll break it up into. I took all the big chunks out of here, but usually about 1-inch chunks. This is a common piece. Get them about an inch or so, and I'll take a piece this size. I'll throw like 4 or 5 of these in my cast iron teapot, and I'll simmer that for about 4 hours. And I just watch it and add water as I need. And after about 4 hours, it comes out blacker than that outer shell. And the thing is use it all. I've watched people, they use a rasp and they take all the black off the outside and only use the copper core. They're crazy. The outside holds the majority of all of the medicinal. That's the biggest part of the medicinal. And so, yeah, want the black and the copper core. You want both. And that tea will come out pitch black. It'll come out. Yeah, don't get it on a white T-shirt. It's never coming out again.
More like coffee.
Yeah, it's like coffee that's been cooking in camp for 3 days. It's black. But what I do is I break it into 1 to 2 inch chunks and do that, or I all of the dregs, the smaller stuff, I'll throw a handful like that in a pot, and then I'll just use a strainer when I pour it into my cup. However, there's other ways to consume chaga, and for convenience, and I always have this in my pack, and it's just a container that has, I had to set my pipe down, that has capsules in it, and that's just finely ground chaga in a pill capsule. You can buy the capsules, you can order them through Amazon.
Oh, really?
But it's just finely, it's chaga dust actually in a capsule, and you just take it like a pill, like a vitamin, and you're getting your raw chaga then that way. So there's many ways you can consume it. I've had people ask me, because I smoke obviously, and they'll ask me, well, have you ever smoked it? I said, as hot as chaga burns, you don't want that in your pipe. I don't know if it's good for you or bad for you, but you don't want that in your pipe. You won't be able to hold on to the pipe because the ember gets awful hot.
Now I got a question again also about the chaga, because you also mentioned the Ojibwe before, and a friend of mine who actually is also from an area and that lived with Ojibwe told me that there's also kind of double gangers of chaga, because I once went out harvesting with her, and I had it was also kind of like that almost ochre copper kind of like color in the mushroom, but it was really solid. It was not crumbly at all, and you also couldn't get that out. It felt like solid wood, but it still had the same color. And she said that it might be a different type of subspecies or so that's dangerous, maybe. So I was just wondering, like, is there any chance to confuse this with something else or so?
No, actually there isn't. There actually isn't. Because okay.
Obviously, you have birch trees in your area, right, Ralph?
Everywhere. it's a very versatile plant that grows everywhere.
They seem more predominant there, easier to find near water sources too. Is that true, Sty?
Yes. In fact, shaga is more prominent if you're in kind of a damp area. Like if you got a creek bed and you got a lot of mature birch growing along that creek bed, you'll find more shaga in that type of area than you will like in the highlands, where it's drier. But yeah, shaga, I've harvested shaga this shaga, I have to use a hammer and a hatchet to break it up.
Okay.
It's hard as a rock. A lot of people look at it and they think, okay, when you harvest it, it might be hard like that. It might be hard like that. But other times when you harvest it, it'll be soft and you can stick a fingernail in it.
Yeah.
And so the hardness of it really doesn't matter. The key is that it's got the proper outer bark type core on it, or shell on it, and it's got the copperish gold core, and it's not. I've never seen anything that comes close to actual shaga. So, and I always would tell somebody, if they're not certain, don't do it. Don't use it.
Yeah, of course. Like if you got any kind of doubt, just don't put it in your mouth or spit it out. Then it at least rhymes, If in doubt, spit it out.
Well, I will say this much, Sty. You keep reaching, or you keep waving that thing in front of me, I'm going to reach into the screen and snag it off you.
Dennis, I got your address, bud. I got your address. Watch your mail over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, in fact, I'm looking forward. With I busted, these two fellas don't know, but I busted my ankle up this summer camping, and it's been 9 weeks since I rolled my ankle over, and it's not healing. And I'm a guy that I got to be outdoors almost every day, and I've been stuck indoors for over a month, and I got a brand spanking new pair of snowshoes, and I'm all geared up for going out and harvesting shaga this winter. And I if I got to do it on a crutch, I'm going out there, because once you get into shaga hunting, it's the winter. To me, that's your winter mushroom hunt, is shaga hunting. And when you got snow up to your tail and it's 20 below zero out, to me that's good shaga hunting. And the nice thing is, it's when it's that cold, shaga is weird because it holds all that moisture. You break it off the tree and take your knife and you cut pieces out of it, and you're going, it's actually still moist. That it's still got moisture in it. It's not ice crystals. It doesn't freeze. I mean, so it's fun to hunt for shaga in the winter. I mean, it's great. But people look at you weird if they come across you and you're out there in the woods. If you got somebody skiing or something that comes through and you're walking around doing this, you're never looking at the ground. You're always up in the trees looking, and it's just like, what's wrong with that guy? He's walking around in the woods looking up in the trees. That's all he does. They don't realize I'm looking for birch gold, But I have no problem here. I get that one season. I was harvesting for 5 families, plus myself, and I was harvesting about 60 to 70 pounds of shaga per winter. And I have it. You wouldn't notice it if you went out in my shaga hunting grounds. You wouldn't be able to tell that I harvested that much out of there. But but I was going to say, this is a little unknown fact too, is that literally 80%, I just about fell out of my chair, 80% of the shaga in the world is in Russia. Is in Russia.
Let's go.
You think about all of that vast land.
Well, no comment as a German. We have bad experiences with Russia. So
that's it. Ralph, I would suggest you try to find it. Maybe Germany, Poland. I wouldn't travel too far into Russia looking for chaga. They might not like it. They might not like that. They'd be going, "Oh shoot, he's back."
The good thing is I would try in the winter yet again, and we know what happens then. We fail.
That's when you're right, the winter. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is who in the world would want to hunt chaga in Russia in the winter? I mean, yeah, you want to stay in a hot tent. We ain't going nowhere. Yeah. Hey, Dennis, this is wonderful. You got.
I had a question here for Ralf too. We never really got into winter bushcrafting. You're mentioning the Alps and stuff like that. And we all know the Alps have a lot of snow. do you get out a lot in the winter time? And what's your experience with the winter type of bushcrafting skills?
Okay, well, a good sleeping bag makes all the difference, I would say. That's the first thing. That's the kind of stuff you want to invest money in if you really want to push your comfort zone into colder temperatures. When it comes to the Alps, I try to avoid them in the winter. It's just too dangerous. If you're not a professional mountaineer, don't jump a mountain. Mountains can be unforgiving, and they can also give you the best experience in your life. So respect the mountain, and it will respect you. That's my opinion on that. And when it comes to winter bushcrafting in general, you need to start slowly, just try to expand your comfort zone in the sense that you can just take some kind of time off in October maybe, or maybe in early spring, and just get to know those temperatures, kind of like get to know these conditions out in the wild or in nature. And then you can slowly go through to December, January, February, and just experience the cold months. Because I see a lot of people make the same mistakes over and over again. They buy some kind of equipment, let's say a sleeping bag, for example, and they just look at that like, oh, extreme temperature, minus 30 degrees Celsius or minus, I don't know how many Fahrenheit, right? And they don't even know that it's all about the comfort level of the sleeping bag, right? It's the extreme level says nothing, that's just bare survival. And you're going to have a horrible time if you just go for that. Yeah, and then they take that, they go outside, and then they wonder why they almost freeze to death. Well, if you never practiced, you can't figure that out. Do baby steps. It's not something to be ashamed of. Start slowly, expand that experience gradually, and get to know different kind of circumstances. You don't want to be trapped in a blizzard and like 30 centimeters of snow in the very first trip that you ever do in winter, right? You want to just start slowly, always. Yeah. I think it's the best tip to give.
And practice at home.
Practice at home, yeah. Go onto your balcony, go into your backyard.
Yeah. I did all that for cold weather stuff. It's the best way to go, because it can be dangerous if you do it wrong.
Yeah, I've camped in my backyard several times in my Kelty. Overnighter, wake up in the morning, go inside and warm up. But yeah, you know what? It's like you say, it's a good way, especially to test gear, because all too many people will buy gear for cold weather. And just because that tag says, minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius, and they get themselves out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work. You know what? I've seen some of the best gear fail.
Yeah.
So definitely test it out. You have to have confidence in your gear, but not false confidence.
Yeah, and maybe you should also understand that gear is just gear. Gear is as good as you are. Because if you don't know how to use your gear, again, you render it useless. There's so many people, like also especially in Europe, that do all this kind of tactical stuff and like, look, I got this special tactical suit and the tactical jacket and so. But then they don't know the basics about the skills in general, Mm-hmm. So I think it's better to just be very humble if you try to do some kind of crazy stunts, and just to take it down a notch. And maybe also, indeed, just get this, what you said, Daniel, you get this opportunity to retreat. Like, again, down the street, like if I go down to the lake, it would take me 10 minutes by bicycle just to come back home if I should get hypothermic or so, and then I just warm up in my own bathtub or so. It's not a shame to abort a trip. You don't have to go on an Arctic expedition and just stay outside for 14 days in a row. And some people have this expectation of themselves, and this is when things go wrong, because you want to be bigger, faster, stronger than you actually are. Yeah. And that's when you do things wrong.
I've seen that over the years. I saw that out in the Northwestern Rockies for 4 years. we get all these folks that they're tourists and they show up and they got all this fancy gear and boom, they drive up way up in the backcountry until they can't drive any further. They put on these 85-pound backpacks and they head off in the woods. And just earlier, they're in towns bragging about how they're going to go out in the wilderness and they're going to rough it.
Yep.
And they come out the next morning saying, I'm never doing that again. I'm never going camping. Nah. And the thing is they get out there and they find out how truly unprepared they were. They thought they were overly prepared, but they were underprepared, and because they didn't understand their own gear.
Yeah.
And they find out that all these movies that we watch and all the romance of the great outdoors and the mountain man, I'm going to go out and be a mountain man. Oh, that sucks. I tell you what, them mountain men they had a pair on them. It ain't that easy. It's not so romantic. I guarantee you.
There's going to be a lot of suffering, actually, and a lot.
You're going to suffer before it gets easy. Yeah, there's suffering to go through. I like what Mama Bear said. That said, I'm a stronger supporter of testing your gear at home. Yeah. I always did that, man. If I got new gear, I'd put it up in the backyard. I'd try it out in the backyard before I get out in the woods and need it.
Yeah.
I get out in the woods and need it, and I'm going, where's the instructions?
And maybe there's also a nice story to that, or actually it's not a nice story, it's pretty horrible, about those two climbers that died on Mount Everest, because now they have these kind of pre-booked Sherpa tours or so with people that don't have any type of stamina, no physique, no practice, no training in mountaineering, no understanding of the equipment, that are just going up that huge mountain, and then have some two Sherpas or so they pay that carry all their gear just so they can take a goddamn selfie on the top of that mountain. And some don't come back, and then they're just like, okay, how could this happen? You try to challenge the greatest force on this planet, which is nature itself, right? You became you're so arrogant that you think that you can take on the greatest mountain. Like if you take a look at Reinhold Messner or other kind of people who climb that, those people practiced and trained for years, if not decennia, and also had some distress situation. And you think you can just book a tour, go up there and just conquer that mountain? Well, it's gonna go wrong. Big time.
Yes, true, so true.
Yeah, most of my winter stuff has been stuff that's been not that far from the car. Especially the really cold weather stuff. It just gives you an out if you really need it.
Right.
Algonquin Park, going to Mule Lake is a great opportunity for stuff like that. They have the warming hut there and everything else in the wintertime. You have your vehicle there. That's where I've done a good deal of my winter camping as well, like within reach of that, right? Warm comfort stations, but you still have it's camping, but it's that safety buffer zone, right? So, yeah.
Well, and that's what, I used to tell my clients that all the time. I'd tell them, find a safe spot and create a micro wilderness out of it and put yourself in that wilderness state, and have yourself in a wilderness state of mind. Don't depend on that nice warm vehicle or that warming shack. Don't put that in the back of your mind as that's plan B. Plan A is to create a micro wilderness and stay out there and actually experience the elements, but always know that you're going to survive it, because survival is just a couple yards away. It's just over there. Yeah.
And maybe there's another thing also that I had with one of the latest winter overnighters that I had almost a year ago now in the last season. Was also a really weird situation, because I was in a birch type of forest, very new kind of area with a lot of young birch trees. And I thought that I did find a lot of dry wood, because there was a lot of dead wood standing there. And I just realized only after I cut down all those pieces of wood that inside of the, basically in the core wood, there was so much moisture soaking in, but it froze. So we basically had kind of like ice cones, you know, inside the actual wood. And I only figured it out once I tried to light it up, because it was still lightweight. It was so punky and rotten. So I thought like, okay, that's dry wood. I can use this. And then you just sit there, you know, you try to start your fire, and all of a sudden you just see those tiny bubbles come out. You just realize like, okay, it's going to be a cold night. And I suffered so much because I couldn't even warm myself up. CBS, very well phenomenon called butt syndrome. Really, really bad times.
I've had many of those fires that just sit there and hiss. All the moisture coming out of the wood, and hardly any flames. You're fanning it with your hat constantly, and that's one thing it took me forever to learn too. Is I couldn't take my hat off and fan that fire and stay warm, because I'm blowing all the heat away from me while I'm trying to get that fire going. You're just feeding the whole purpose. And dry wood, teaching someone how to identify true dry wood, that's a benefit to them. And learning it the hard way, like you said, Ralph, it can get pretty frustrating.
Yeah. But that's also the nice thing, you know, every time you fail, you learn something new. So people should also try to kind of like reframe failure. It's nothing bad. It's something great. You got another experience, and it's one experience on your ladder to becoming better. So try to just reframe this. You know, it's okay to fail.
Yeah, you learn more from failure than you do from success, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty common across the board.
Learn from your mistakes, man.
Yeah.
I got an interesting question here for Ralph, actually, from Kevin once again. We're having problems here in Ontario with kids getting out in the wilderness, lack of motivation and skill, and phobia. You having the same issue in your country?
Certainly so. But I think we should not generalize that, because kids are kids, you know, you get these type of kids and those type of kids. But I think, like also in my experience, kids are kind of like losing touch with nature in general. And that's mainly also due to new technology. Like I don't want to sound like an old rusty guy, you know, who's against modern technology and tablets and everything. But like we kind of like unlearn self-sufficiency in a sense, because we are so used to convenience, you know, take your tablet, order pizza, kind of like that thing. And in my case, like I had nothing to do. I was living in a tiny town with some 20 houses, right? And we played out in the forest. Like in my particular case, I'm also not a big fan of spiders, for example. If you talk about phobias, I really don't like I like spiders because they're awesome animals, but I just don't want to have them close to me. But I kind of like sensibilized myself by just going outdoors, you know, and experiencing nature, because it's part of nature. And if you don't do this because you sit at home and you just watch pictures of a zoo or so, or the only wildlife you encounter somewhere in a zoo or some kind of park, you will never really get that connection. And it's a difficult topic, because how do you get kids out? You know, can you force them? No, absolutely not. If they don't want to, you can't do this. But maybe you also just need to take those baby steps into account, right? Do that step by step and figure out what these kids like. For example, like now I'm working as a voluntary type of teacher for like a school with children, kindergarten kids and elementary school kids. And you got one autistic boy there who's completely into math. So if you start doing some calculations, like how many ants can an anteater eat in an hour, then he gets interested in nature. This is the way to get to him, you know, this is just the way he ticks. But then another kid just doesn't have any interest in maths and just wants to play in the mud. So if you really want to kind of get kids out, you know, you need to figure out how they work, because they're also just like mini grown-ups in a way. They have their own mind. If you understand what makes them tick, then you can address this and just get them close to whatever they might enjoy. Maybe some kids like to collect flowers. Start with that. Maybe somebody else just likes to walk around and just do some kind of mud cakes, you know, or throw this at the girls or so. I don't know. But then just kind of like try to stimulate that type of behavior, because they will just gradually expand their own connection with nature. That's just how it works, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I always promoted just that. I'm a firm believer that if you can get a kid into the outdoors, and you know, and you have to watch because of the impact. You don't want it to be a negative impact with young kids. You want them to go out there and learn the outdoors without too much fear. And I found that with kids, that it was nice because I could demonstrate something, and then those kids would go, "Well, I can't do it just like you. It's not working. It's not." And I tell them, "Well, do it for yourself the way you want to." And man, them kids, I had kids that could learn fire starting from, you know, anything from getting a fire going with only 2 matches, get a fire going with a ferro rod, get a fire going with a flint and steel. I had kids that could beat out adults so quick. They learned so fast because all I would do is do a demonstration for them and then let them have at it, and only coach them if they really, really were struggling. Otherwise, they always found a way. The kids always found a way. And it was so weird. I had this one little girl, bugs. I mean, if you said bug, she was at the top of the next tree. She nothing to do with bugs. By the end of 5 days, it was a group of kids with the Boys and Girls Club here. That I do day camps with them, and I had 5 day camps in a row. This girl, on the 5th day, she comes walking up to me and she goes, "Sty, I'm sure I got a couple of wood ticks on my back. Could you check?" And she just calm about it, and she goes, "I can't reach them." And I looked, and I go, "Yeah, you got a couple crawling on you. They're not attached." And she goes, "Okay." And I picked them off, and I turn around to look at her face because I'm behind her. I took them off her back. I turned to look at her face, and she turns to me, and she's got her hand out. She goes, "Give them to me. Give them. I want to see them."
Yeah.
That kid, all you had to say is bug, and she wanted to go home. On the 5th day, it was, "Here, give me those wood ticks. I want to check them out." She had lost those inhibitions and those fears, and she was a kid that got to have a cell phone. If I can't talk to all my friends all over the world, I can't do this. But every day, I saw a change in her, and now, and that was several years ago. Now she's in her mid-teens, late teens, and she's outdoors all the time. I mean,
you know the funny part is these things here, these things will be the demise, right? These computers, it's what's stopping people from getting outdoors. And it's funny that our platform, for what we're enjoying, all of us here, right? Look at the platform that we're using to get this message out there.
Mm-hmm.
Is the thing that's actually going to be the total demise of what we're trying to get out there, right? It's the technology nowadays. You know, we averted to it earlier. Whether it's garbage on the trails or garbage right here on our desks, that is this technology.
right.
It just has such a bearing on what it was 20 years ago. Daniel, when you were a kid, did you play hockey on the street?
Oh, hell yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How many kids do you see on the street playing hockey nowadays? You never see it.
Well, they're not allowed in a lot of places, which is kind of sad. But
Right.
I mean, that's what we did. You know, it's all we did. We came home from school, we threw on the skates, and we were gone.
Because we didn't have these things, right?
Yeah. Mom would flash the light.
Derby and Rock'em Sock'em Robots and all these cool kid games, right?
But if you look behind me, look, video game posters, and I'm an IT manager by profession.
Yeah.
But you balance it, right? You figure out your balance.
You have to. You have to. I'm going to pop a comment here on screen. Northern Wilderness Excursion says, "We live in Ontario. My son likes it outside more than inside. He'll love wilderness living for sure." And then further below, hope I didn't go too far here. And then he also says, "Society seems to teach kids that rain and snow is bad. Now there's snow days off everywhere it snows. When I was a kid, there were hardly snow days, and I had to walk to the bus."
Yeah,
I remember the blizzard of 77 down here in Southern Ontario, right? I remember, I think that was one of the first snow days I ever had off as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I used to walk to school in here's the story for my kids, right? I used to walk to school in 4 feet of snow uphill both ways, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? It was true back then. You know, my parents didn't drive me to school, right? So kids today are getting soft when it comes, and that's why kids are afraid to get out and do this stuff, because they're too stuck to their, you know, Clash of Clans or their Fortnite and, you know, all these different mediums that keep them from getting out there. Mind you, you take a kid out there and you put them out there for a day or two and have them open their mind. Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised how many of them actually go, "This is cool."
Yeah, well, you take them out so their batteries die on their devices.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And then they have to, you know, start re-entertaining themselves, and next thing you know, they're off, right?
Any of the kids I've ever taken out go, "Dennis, can I borrow your solar charger?"
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just as bad. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that video I did, Dennis. It was called Winter Gear in 1964.
I will watch it. Yeah.
And in that, I talk about in 1964. Yeah, our boots were those. They were the pull-on rubbers with the little buckles on them, you know, that snapped over, and you were wearing your regular shoes inside that boot. Well, those aren't warm and they're not waterproof. So yeah, we had bread bags over everything, and then you put the boot on. So everybody had bread bags in their boots.
Yeah, of course.
And our favorite pair of mittens was a pair of old socks. I mean, none of it. We'd get a brand new pair of mittens, and we'd lose them in a week. And then the rest of the winter, our mom would say, "Hey, grab some socks if you want your hands warm." And the thing is my parents used to always say that to other people. They'd say, "Oh no, school's out for 2 weeks over Christmas. You can have them kids harassing you for 2 weeks." My parents would say, "Oh no, they just sleep here. Yeah. They get up in the morning, they have breakfast, and they're outdoors, and we don't see them again until dinner time. And then they go to bed." They said, "No, they don't live here. They just sleep here. They're outdoors all the time." And that has gone away. It has gone away. You don't see people standing in their doorway yelling, "Kids, it's dark out. It's time to get in the house. Get it. It's, you know, you've been out there all day." You don't hear that anymore.
No.
And it used to be they had to force us to come in, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's the other way. Everybody I talk to says, "I can't get my kids outdoors for nothing. Those kids won't go out and play." And I tell them, well, reverse psychology.
The parents can't get through to the kids because they all got those earmuffs on and they can't hear their parents, right? Because they got
I tell them, use reverse psychology. And when they're pull the earbuds out or they turn away from their video games, tell them, "Hey, I heard of something really cool. It's down at this park," and catch their interest as if it's something new for them to do. Don't try to tell them, "You need to be like I was when I was a kid." No, introduce them to the outdoors as if, "Hey, I got something. You think that's neat what you're doing on TV? You should come check this out." Give them a reason to go do it because it's something new to them. "Oh, I get to check something neat out. I got to go see what that is." But if the minute you tell them, "This is what we used to do, we didn't sit in front of that." Oh, that wall, boy, they start stacking more bricks on that wall. "You're getting close, Dad. I don't want to hear that." You know, but yeah.
Okay, guys. So we're actually 20 minutes over time, and that's cool because things are going great. We got great conversation going. I'm gonna try and close up shop here about 9:30 because I just got the text saying we're going out for chicken wings after my wife gets done with bowling. So you don't like chicken wings, I gotta have them.
Yeah, got it.
Ralph, can you see in the chat there? Kevin asked a question of you. Did you want to cover that one?
Yeah, let me just quickly have a look. Okay, so does the bushcraft thing motivate the youth, or are you some bushcrafters promoting them to cut green trees and stuff? Yeah, okay, that's two questions, right? So first for the youth again, I also agree with Sty. You know, you just have to let them do their own thing because they want this feeling of success. Like sometimes what I like to use as a trick is like, "Hey, say, can you help me out? Like I want to get that fire started, but I don't know how. You got an idea?" And then they're just like, "Yeah, why don't you use that thing?" You know, like then they play with the ferro. It's like, "Look, the sparks. You need to put the sparks in there." And I'm like, "Okay, but how?" Show me, and then they just do it all by themselves. Let them figure this stuff out by themselves. I think in order to motivate them, you just need to give them the chance to explore things, because that's what we all do as kids, right? We want to kind of like, we want to be taken seriously too, right? We kind of like little grown-ups, you know, we want to be on eye level with the grown-ups. So if you don't kind of like push them into any kind of direction, just ask open questions, for example, and just let them do their thing, it's awesome. Happened often to me also, like at Bushcraft meetings. There's this boy called Till. He's 4 years old now or so, and he always passes by and he's like, "Spider, look, I caught that." And it just explains everything, like it has 8 legs. And then you just reply like, "Oh, really? Wow, that's a lot." And he explains more, like, "Yeah, and also a lot of eyes," and then like these kind of things, you know. So they like do this all by themselves if you just give them the space to do so. But yeah, then also for the second question quickly, yeah, am I promoting to cut green trees? No, absolutely not, of course. It's an irresponsible behavior, in my opinion, unless you need to build certain type of tools. So let's say, for example, you cut a piece of rowan or so, like you got 2 branches or 2, like a tree growing like this, you can take one if you have a clean cut here and then just let the tree grow. Because sometimes you need this kind of material to build a digging stick or I don't know what. You can't really avoid that. Hazel is also a great example. You know, if you just cut one branch of a hazel bush, doesn't do the bush no harm, right? But I wouldn't promote any kind of irresponsible behavior, like propagating this idea that nature is your supermarket and you go in and like, I want this and this and this and this. Use reason, you know, use things in a moderate way and based on necessity, because that's again the thing with bushcrafting. It's not about also about convenience for your stay, but not about convenience in the sense of consumerism, right? It's about necessities. Do I need this? Yes, then I do it. Don't I need it? Well, then I just leave that be and I go for a different solution. That's basically it. That's the bottom line.
Ralph, you might find this interesting, but that was one of the spiels I throw at my clients is now when we step into our first day of stepping out of camp, I said, I want every one of you as you leave camp to let Mother Nature your home know that you're home. Say, Mom, I'm home. And they look at me like I'm goofy.
Yeah.
I said, no, now you're walking into Mother Nature's home. Now think about, you walk into your mother's home. Are you going to go in there and trash it? Are you going to eat everything out of her cupboards and her refrigerator? Are you going to abuse her pet? Are you, think of all the things that you could do out here in the wilderness that's negative to Mother Nature that you wouldn't do to your own mother. So when you walk into Mother Nature, you say, hi, Mother Nature, I'm home, and make yourself comfortable, but don't abuse your mother.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And my clients, it stuck with them. It really, and I'd see them do something bad, like, they start cutting down saplings to do something. And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. You're tearing your mother's curtains down. You think your mom's going to like that? And then they get that look like, oh, no. Oh, yeah, I shouldn't have been doing that. Yeah, because laying right there on the ground next to you is a dead pole you're going to use for the same purpose. So yeah, respect it as if it's Mom's house,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also realize, you don't have to be a spiritual person, but where are you coming from? That's the thing. Where are we all coming from? We are all part of nature and we cannot change this. No matter how much technology we invent or I don't know what. And I think this is an important realization. What also helps me, by the way, if I have any people participating in seminars or so, if they make a mistake, I just ask them like, okay, why did you do this? And I just let them elaborate, and then they're like, yeah, because I thought it's a good idea. And I said like, yeah, can you think of an alternative? Just let them do the thinking work all by themselves, because you can't patronize people if you're just like, no, use this technique, carve that notch, buy that pair of boots. People just think that you're a pretentious idiot. Probably, just ask them like, can you do it differently?
Yeah, I love that, because it gives that individual that you're trying to help learn, it gives them ownership.
Yeah.
And they should take ownership in the things they do, good or bad. They need to take the ownership of it themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, fellas. So here we are. I'm looking at the clock here, 9:28. It's been a great night of conversation. I have to say, Ralf, you have been an awesome guest. Thank you very much for participating in this. Like I say, everybody, check out his channel. He's got some really interesting videos. You will learn something, I guarantee it. Whether you are a bushcrafter, a camper, a canoer, a hiker, biker, or you're a kitchen mom, it doesn't really matter. You know, you can teach you to carve a spoon, right? But do we have any closing statements, Sty? Anything you'd like to close off with?
All I'd like to close off with is it's awesome, Ralf, that I met you now in person.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And I do follow your channel, by the way.
Yeah.
And Daniel, awesome. It's awesome to have you down here with me. And Dennis, this is your best interview panel yet. I mean, I thought Pine Martin was great. Well, and Martin, he'll understand me saying this is awesome. This was awesome, and it never went off track. It was just beautiful, beautiful stream, man. Keep them coming, and thanks for having me up.
Well, things are progressing. Thanks for joining in, Sty. How about yourself, Daniel?
Oh, I'm glad to be my first time on the panel. I'm really enjoying this series. So thank you so much for doing this, Dennis.
Thank you.
And I'm meeting some new people I did not know about Ralf. I will look into that right away. Mama Bear and I, we watch an awful lot of YouTube stuff. So we're going to put that onto the list. So
Mama Bear's popping in too and poking into the screen there. That's awesome.
Yeah, she needs to get into one of these panels. We'll push her in.
Every week it's going to carry the same format. I'm trying to improve things as we go along. So, things are just going to be progressing. And, yeah, man, hopefully there's big things to come. I know we got a couple of great guests. I'll get to that in a minute there. Ralf, how about yourself? Any closing statements?
Well, first of all, thanks to everyone, because I also got to encounter a lot of awesome people. Daniel, Sty, Dennis, of course. All the people in the chat. Was a great time, and I don't regret it at all. It's 3:30 a.m. at the moment right over here. And then
sorry, man.
I don't even bother. It was worth the time, absolutely. And I hope that I may stick around, maybe like in any upcoming episode, like in a couple of weeks or whatever, I might be around. Would be great to have another talk. And I also learned a couple of things. So also thanks for that. Always great to get new insights. And also, Dennis, keep up the good work, because I like the format. Absolutely, it's a great idea just to bring people together. It doesn't happen a lot, and it's a pretty great initiative.
Thanks, Rolf. Like I say, you've been awesome, man. And you know what? You are definitely welcome at any time, at any chat. Get in here, and we always do the live panel in the second half. That's awesome. Just in closing, guys and gals, I'd just like to say thank you for popping by and watching the stream. Like I say, we went into overtime tonight. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you know what's coming up with our future shows. We look forward to having future guests. Once again, next week, Kevin Callan is going to be our guest on the show. Kevin, I'm looking so forward to that, because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of things to talk about. We do have a couple of openings there for some future guests, just trying to close up the 2019 season. And if you have any ideas for the show, please do drop me an email. It's canoehound@gmail.com. And what else we got here? So like I say, we have Kevin Callan as our guest next week. In 3 weeks' time, we have Millie Grace, the Bushcraft Daughter. And that's about that. So please do join us. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, my motto, keep the adventures alive. Thanks, everybody.
Amen to that.
Great night.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good one. Take care.